slow science, soft stories, peaceful nights. Welcome to Lena's Night Lab. Right now, a hidden microscopic army is fighting a relentless war beneath your skin to repair cellular damage and literally hold you together. But this incredible healing process is actually a biological compromise that dictates how we age, scar, and survive. From the chaotic battlefield of a fresh wound to the future of regenerative medicine, discover the astonishing science of your body's ultimate maintenance system. As the evening deepens and your physical form begins transitioning into its natural restorative rest cycle, you might find yourself relaxing in a wide variety of exceptionally cozy environments. Perhaps you are tucked safely away in a comfortably warm, drowsy room. Or maybe you are watching the rain fall while lost in deep, quiet contemplation. It is entirely possible that you are staying up well past a reasonable hour, actively ignoring your typical bedtime routines. Alternatively, you could be resting in a completely tranquil space, accompanied by a warm beverage that is gradually losing its heat on the table right beside you. The educational content presented here is specifically designed to offer a soothing, deeply reflective exploration of fascinating scientific concepts. These gentle explanations aim to transform your daily perspective, making the universe seem simultaneously more mysterious and much more understandable, ultimately creating the perfect mental atmosphere for easily drifting off to sleep. By embarking on these serene intellectual expeditions, we explore complex and highly engaging subjects with a soft, inquisitive approach, guiding your mind through relaxing discoveries, one gently curious and interesting topic at a single time. And for our journey tonight, we turn our attention inward to a process unfolding within you at this very moment. There is no need to suddenly sit up and verify that your limbs are intact, because they undoubtedly are. This is not a frightening event. Deep within the quiet, unseen shadows of your physical form, a massive restoration project continuously operates. Fresh cells swap out old ones, and microscopic mistakes get fixed on the spot. Acting like tiny, dedicated security personnel, immune cells calmly march through your tissues. Meanwhile, blood vessels make subtle adjustments, and proteins cycle through folding, unfolding, recycling, and reconstructing. Worn-out material is swept out to make room for new arrivals. Whether dealing with a minor scrape, a fading bruise, a pulled muscle, a mending bone, or simply the everyday friction of daily life, your system actively reacts. What makes this fascinating is the sheer lack of physical sensation. You could be resting in a comfortable seat, snuggled beneath a warm cover, or just nodding off, completely unaware that trillions of microscopic workers perform non-stop upkeep. Rather than functioning like a passive appliance, fixed only after a total breakdown, your anatomy operates much like a bustling metropolis after dark. Imagine maintenance teams navigating shadowy avenues, tiny lights flickering in windows, plumbing inspected, structures patched up, and communications buzzing. Perhaps with a few cellular workers scratching their heads over a stray pile of collagen. While your exterior appears motionless, your interior is in perpetual motion. Take a tiny nick on your finger, it starts sealing up almost instantly. Blood coagulates to form a protective plug, and inflammation steps in as a highly regulated, essential alert rather than a random error. Defense cells sweep away debris while skin cells gradually inch over the gap. Collagen strands are arranged like a construction scaffold, eventually restoring the surface, sometimes leaving a faint scar as a subtle souvenir. Fractured bones perform an even more spectacular feat. Instead of just sticking back together like shattered ceramic, a bone cultivates active tissue to construct a provisional bridge. Once solidified, it gradually reforms its shape based on the physical stresses it endures. Far from being lifeless rock, your skeleton is vibrant, highly responsive, and continuously adapting to your daily activities. Following a tough workout, muscles rebuild. After fighting off a bug, immune defenses recover. The digestive tract lining constantly regenerates, while genetic code is proofread and fixed at the cellular level. Broken down proteins are taken apart and repurposed. Even slumber, which we often view as a total shutdown, actually serves as the ultimate overnight shift for internal repair crews. Of course, this biological machinery isn't flawless. It leaves scars, loses speed with age, and occasionally overreacts, underperforms, or fixes one issue only to create another. Recovery isn't a mystical force. It is pure biology which inherently involves compromises. A rapid fix might result in scar tissue, intense inflammation can lead to puffiness, and an aggressive immune reaction might require careful suppression. Ultimately, you thrive not because your body executes every task flawlessly, but because it manages to do just enough, well enough, and frequently enough to keep you going. Building on that constant effort to keep you going, tonight's focus goes beyond simply fixing a cut. We are exploring the profound mystery of how a living organism actually holds itself together. What signals tell your skin to seal a gap? What dictates exactly when blood should clot versus flow freely? How do bones reconstruct their own architecture? Why can certain creatures sprout new appendages while we just form scar tissue? How does sleep actively boost recovery? And what unseen, microscopic actions continuously unfold deep within your cells to sustain this endless restoration? To understand this remarkable biology, we must explore the mechanics of human physical repair. The foundation of this process starts with a rather reassuring reality. Whether you are relaxing or completely idle, your internal systems remain incredibly busy, quietly fighting hard to maintain your existence. Building on that hidden internal hustle, the human form can easily appear entirely finalized to an outside observer. You might see a hand resting gently on a blanket, a face softened by deep sleep, or a chest rising and falling with slow, ordinary breaths. Imagine a person just sitting quietly in a chair, doing absolutely nothing particularly heroic, dramatic, or worthy of a documentary film. From a distance, our physical bodies can seem perfectly still, completely finished, and almost entirely settled. Yet, we are far from being static, finished objects. Rather, we operate as dynamic, living maintenance networks. Even during your most peaceful moments, your biology is actively repairing, replacing, cleaning, defending, balancing, and adjusting. Fresh cells are constantly renewed, while outdated proteins get dismantled and reused. Microscopic injuries are managed before you ever notice them, and blood chemistry is strictly kept within narrow limits. Meanwhile, immune cells patrol your tissues for trouble, skin sheds and rebuilds, and bone continuously remodels. Instead of a frozen statue, picture a city at night. The lights might be turned low, but repair crews are still out there fixing pipes, pretending they definitely know where the leak is. This endless upkeep is never just a side activity. It is the fundamental condition allowing life to continue. Building directly on that foundation, we find the core concept of homeostasis. This vital mechanism allows your physical form to keep its internal environment steady, regardless of these endless fluctuations happening both outside and within. Rather than sitting in a rigid, unchanging state of equilibrium, your system relies on continuous, tiny adjustments. These micro-corrections keep everything inside the safe operational zone required for cellular survival. Think about the sheer number of variables being juggled. Body heat requires strict regulation, blood sugar levels need careful management, and the ratio of water to salt must remain perfectly tuned. Furthermore, tissues demand a steady oxygen supply, while waste gases like carbon dioxide must be swiftly cleared out. Your circulatory pressure cannot be allowed to wander aimlessly, and the pH level of your blood demands exact control. Every single cell relies entirely on this invisible, underlying steadiness. So, while you might be strolling down the street, completely distracted by whether there is still milk in the fridge, your internal machinery is achieving this equilibrium through dynamic action. For instance, when you overheat, surface blood vessels expand to vent warmth, while sweat glands activate to chill your skin. Conversely, dropping temperatures trigger surface vessels to constrict, prompting muscle shivers and metabolic shifts to trap heat. Should bacteria invade a minor cut, your immune defenses instantly mobilize. A nicked vein immediately triggers the coagulation cascade. Finally, whenever cells grow old or sustain damage, the body steps in to fix, swap out, recycle, or clear away the cellular debris. Understanding how this massive cellular cleanup stays organized requires looking at the deep physiological roots of our internal balance. Back in the 19th century, the French physiologist Claude Bernard highlighted just how crucial the body's internal environment really is. He realized that animal cells don't simply sit out in the open facing the external world. Instead, they float in a hidden inner ocean of blood, fluids, nutrients, salts, gases, and chemical messengers. For life to survive, this internal ocean must stay incredibly stable so those cells can successfully perform their daily jobs. Building on this foundation in the early 20th century, the American physiologist Walter Cannon expanded the concept and officially coined the term homeostasis. By researching exactly how we react to hunger, fear, stress, injuries, and shifting environments, Cannon proved something truly amazing. He demonstrated that we aren't just a random pile of disconnected pieces, but rather a highly unified network, constantly talking to itself to preserve perfect internal balance. Achieving this delicate equilibrium doesn't happen by magic, though. It demands a continuous, endless stream of tiny, non-stop adjustments. To keep those non-stop adjustments running, your body performs repairs across multiple scales simultaneously. Down at the microscopic level, cellular DNA faces a constant barrage of threats. Ultraviolet rays, environmental toxins, metabolic byproducts, and simple copying mistakes during cell division can all alter your genetic code. This isn't a dramatic sign that your physical form is crumbling. Instead, it simply highlights that being chemically alive requires ongoing upkeep. Fortunately, cells come equipped with built-in molecular mechanics to fix these genetic typos. These internal tools spot specific errors, snip out broken segments, reconstruct missing parts, and correct replication flaws. When a cell suffers too much harm to function safely, it triggers apoptosis, a controlled self-destruct sequence. While programmed cell death sounds intense, it acts as a vital shield. By quietly eliminating itself, a compromised cell protects the overall health of the neighboring tissue. It certainly lacks glamour, but then again, top-tier maintenance usually flies under the radar. Moving up to a macro level, the healing process becomes visible. A minor skin scrape instantly kicks off a highly orchestrated chain reaction. Blood vessels respond while platelets swarm to create a clot. Immune troops rush in to sweep away ruined debris before fresh tissue starts growing. Skin cells then migrate over the gap until the surface fully seals. That ordinary-looking scab is really just the protective sealing over an incredibly active biological work zone. Your skeleton demands this same level of constant upkeep. Though bones feel rigid and quiet, they are vibrant, living structures packed with minerals, collagen, nerves, blood vessels, and cells. A continuous cycle called bone remodeling relies on osteoclasts to dismantle worn-out material, while osteoblasts construct fresh replacement. This allows your framework to fix tiny internal fractures and adjust to physical stress. Whether you are taking a stroll, scaling a hill, carrying shopping bags, or foolishly trying to shift furniture alone, your bones record those physical loads and adapt accordingly. Rounding out this multi-scale effort is your immune system, which plays a massive role in everyday maintenance. Through immune surveillance, defensive cells patrol your lymph, blood, and tissues to hunt down injuries, infections, rogue cells, and general wear and tear. Some responders act fast with broad tactics, whereas others deploy highly targeted strikes. Some retain memories of past illnesses, while different cells focus on hauling away trash and directing tissue regeneration. Ultimately, your immunity is far more than just a defense force. It doubles as a biological cleanup squad, an intricate messaging grid, and occasionally a somewhat overly eager security team. But why must this biological crew never clock out? Remaining flawlessly intact forever is impossible for your physical form. Constant interaction with the outside environment is reality for living tissues. Battling your skin are microbes, temperature extremes, physical force, UV rays, and rubbing. Processing outside air is work your lungs tackle with every inhalation. Navigating a massive microbiome, digestive juices, harsh acids, and meals falls to your gut. Heavy loads keep tendons and muscles busy, while internal force occupies blood vessels. Generating cellular energy requires oxygen, spawning unstable compounds that harm cell structures. Causing continuous physical degradation are the exact functions keeping you alive. As the years pass, this constant wear introduces the complex reality of aging, gradually slowing down our internal fix-it crews. Stem cells take much longer to react, and immune responses lose their pinpoint accuracy. Collagen alters its basic structure, blood vessels lose their natural flexibility, and genetic errors slowly pile up. Furthermore, certain cells enter a state called senescence. They quit multiplying entirely, yet keep pumping out chemical messages that influence surrounding tissues. Getting older is never just a single biological malfunction. Instead, it is a lifelong ledger of healing, physical strain, bodily adjustments, and minor flaws slowly etched into your physical form. Despite this, your biology pushes forward with incredible endurance, handling most maintenance completely behind the scenes. You never actually feel the microscopic enzymes fixing your genetic code, nor do you register the breakdown of outdated proteins. You remain oblivious to white blood cells patrolling your tissues, minute shifts in circulation, or subtle tweaks to your internal chemistry. This massive operation usually triumphs precisely because it operates in total silence. Even when you appear perfectly motionless from the outside, your physical form is buzzing with endless activity. Deep underneath your skin, coursing through your veins, and tucked within your bones, organs, nerves, and cellular gaps, your biology tirelessly preserves the exact environment needed to keep you going. It might not be flawless, infinite, or effortless, but it operates with careful determination, relentless persistence, and a beautifully quiet biological grace. Building on that quiet biological grace, the immediate aftermath of an injury appears remarkably calm from an external perspective. You might only see a slender crimson mark from a minor slice, feel a sharp sting from a scraped knee, or notice a faint, throbbing discomfort developing under the skin from a fresh bruise. Beneath the surface, however, your internal systems have instantly registered a disruption to their peaceful routine. The cellular residents, previously resting comfortably in their designated spots, have suddenly been thrown into chaos. Many have been ruptured, squashed, pulled apart, or entirely shattered. Microscopic circulatory pathways might be torn, allowing fluids to seep into unauthorized zones. Molecules typically secured within cellular walls are now floating freely into the surrounding environment. To your physiology, this displacement acts as critical data. Almost instantly, the harmed cells broadcast emergency signals. Since cells lack vocal cords, and cannot literally yell for help. They rely entirely on chemical communication. The traumatized zone emits specific molecules to warn neighboring tissues about the crisis. Certain alerts originate from ruptured cellular boundaries, while others are dispatched by surviving but highly stressed cells altering their operational habits. Consequently, the wounded spot transforms into a microscopic chemical lighthouse, broadcasting its location long before your conscious brain even registers the accident. This highlights a fundamental reality of recovery. The mending process kicks off long before any visible signs of healing appear. Within the initial few seconds, the adjacent circulatory network springs into action. Numerous tiny capillaries temporarily shrink through a mechanism known as vasoconstriction. During this phase, the muscular coatings of these pathways contract, which shrinks their internal diameter and restricts blood movement through the traumatized region. This rapid constriction minimizes fluid loss, while your physiology readies the more intricate phases of recovery. It serves as a brief stopgap measure. Your system cannot permanently shut off the local blood supply, as the wounded tissues still desperately require oxygen, vital nutrients, defensive cells, and molecular instructions. Nevertheless, temporarily squeezing the pathways is highly effective. Think of it as pressing your thumb over a dripping pipe while you search for a wrench. It might not be the most sophisticated fix, but biological systems excel at pragmatic, immediate solutions. Furthermore, a blood vessel is far more than a simple empty pipe. Its interior is coated with endothelial cells, which collectively form the endothelium. This dynamic tissue layer regulates circulation, coagulation, inflammatory responses, and the dialogue between your bloodstream and adjacent tissues. Though incredibly thin and frequently ignored, endothelial cells rank among the most crucial components in your entire anatomy. They ensure blood flows smoothly under normal circumstances, yet they expertly direct coagulation when structural damage occurs. In a healthy state, these cells maintain a slick interior coating that prevents platelets from adhering. Slipperiness is vital, as circulation must remain unobstructed. Blood cannot simply clump together every time it encounters minor friction. However, when a vessel rips, the hidden structural layers beneath this slick surface are suddenly revealed. Deep structural proteins like collagen are exposed to the flowing bloodstream, acting as a massive red flag to circulating platelets. Platelets themselves are tiny cellular fragments generated in the bone marrow by gigantic precursor cells known as megakaryocytes. Lacking a true nucleus, they are not fully formed cells. Yet their role is absolutely monumental. They cruise through your veins in massive quantities, remaining completely dormant until they detect structural damage. Upon colliding with a torn vessel wall, they undergo a dramatic transformation. They anchor themselves to the ruined surface, alter their physical shape, and broadcast their own chemical alarms. These alerts draw even more platelets to the scene, causing them to clump together. This rapid accumulation creates a preliminary physical barrier over the wound. While it is not the robust, highly structured clot that will eventually form, it represents the very first physical effort to plug the leak. This platelet aggregation happens incredibly fast, often starting within mere seconds. Such rapid deployment is critical, as your body must halt fluid loss before transitioning to slower, more methodical repair stages. A minor scratch does not require a massive architectural overhaul right away. It simply demands a quick temporary patch. The platelets deliver this immediate fix, functioning much like a person hastily shoving a bucket under a dripping ceiling and acting as if it was a brilliant master plan. As these fragments accumulate, various chemical couriers flood the wounded zone. Histamine, perhaps the most famous of these, is secreted by mast cells to make adjacent capillaries more porous. While making blood vessels leaky might sound like a terrible engineering flaw, this increased permeability is actually brilliant. It permits defensive cells and vital proteins to exit the bloodstream and infiltrate the damaged tissue to start cleaning and protecting the area. Meanwhile, prostaglandins, another vital group of molecular messengers, manage pain, inflammation, vascular adjustments, and fever. Within the wounded zone, they dictate the local reaction, heightening tissue sensitivity and creating that familiar throbbing ache. While discomfort is annoying, it provides crucial feedback, prompting you to protect the area and stop aggravating the injury. Additionally, cytokines act as specialized signaling proteins that allow immune and tissue cells to coordinate their efforts. They orchestrate the inflammatory process, direct defensive cell activities, and determine the intensity of the bodily reaction. Working alongside them are chemokines, which function like molecular breadcrumbs, guiding immune cells precisely to the locations where they are most needed. Together, these signaling proteins transform a chaotic wound into a highly organized recovery zone. This initial reaction is far from random puffiness or redness. It is a highly structured biological dialogue. Extensive biomedical research supported by the National Institutes of Health has thoroughly documented the overlapping systems governing inflammation, vascular biology, coagulation, and tissue mending. This modern scientific consensus reveals the incredible complexity hidden within even the smallest scratch. What appears straightforward externally involves meticulous scheduling. Vessels constrict, then dilate, platelets adhere and signal, endothelial cells detect trauma, and molecular messengers summon the immune cavalry. Consequently, warmth, puffiness, redness, and discomfort emerge as the local environment shifts. A bruise operates on these exact same principles, even though the outer skin remains intact. Microscopic vessels beneath the epidermis rupture, letting blood seep into the surrounding tissues. Initially, this trapped blood creates a dark red or purplish mark. As the days pass, the discoloration shifts because your body actively dismantles and recycles the trapped blood components. Therefore, a bruise is much more than a simple skin stain. It is visible proof of the subterranean cleanup and recycling crew hard at work. Whether dealing with a scrape, a deep slice, or a blunt bruise, the underlying trigger is identical. The body recognizes a breached boundary. The entire cascade starts with simple awareness. A disruption has occurred, requiring a seal, a cleanup, and eventual reconstruction. The truly astonishing element is the sheer speed of this activation. Long before a scab hardens or the area becomes fully tender, your physiology has already launched its primary emergency protocol. It has restricted fluid loss, rallied platelets, triggered chemical alarms, and prepped the tissue for the demanding tasks to come. True recovery does not start with the final scar, nor does it begin with the crusty scab. It originates in those silent, initial milliseconds when harmed cells broadcast their chemical distress calls. Capillaries squeeze, platelets swarm, and the vascular lining dictates the strategy. This rapid, localized, and highly accurate emergency response is reliable enough to function flawlessly thousands of times throughout your life. And once that preliminary platelet plug is secured, your body can finally start constructing a much more durable temporary seal forged directly from your own blood. To truly understand this durable seal, we first have to appreciate the bizarre dual existence of your blood. Under normal circumstances, this vital liquid needs to stay completely fluid. It must glide effortlessly through your veins, arteries, and microscopic capillaries, transporting everything from oxygen and nutrients to hormones, immune defenders, heat, and cellular waste. It simply cannot afford to sludge up or thicken just because a blood vessel bends, your heart pumps a beat, or you stand up a bit too fast. and instantly regret the decision. Yet, the moment a vessel suffers damage, this flowing river must execute a total personality shift. It has to halt its free-flowing journey right at the injury site, transforming into something sticky, highly organized, and solid enough to plug the leak. In essence, it must morph from a rushing stream into a makeshift dam. We call this dramatic transformation coagulation, or blood clotting. When you see a dark scab on a surface scrape, it is tempting to think your blood is just drying up like a puddle in the sun. However, coagulation is far more complex than mere evaporation. It is a tightly regulated emergency response protocol. At the breach, platelets swarm the compromised vessel wall, while specialized clotting factors trigger one another in a precise sequence. Calcium ions facilitate crucial chemical reactions, and the injured tissue itself broadcasts signals to direct the entire operation. During this process, a soluble protein named fibrinogen gets converted into fibrin, which weaves a structural mesh to fortify that initial platelet gathering. The resulting patch is by no means a flawless, permanent fix. Instead, it serves as a vital stopgap barrier. In those critical first seconds, your physiology does not need to reconstruct the entire ruined area. It merely needs to halt the hemorrhage, keep contaminants out, and establish a firm foundation for the slower healing phases to follow. Essentially, forming a clot is your body's way of buying precious time. This sealing process typically kicks off with the platelets. These tiny cellular fragments anchor themselves to exposed collagen and other ruined structural elements along the vessel's interior. Upon latching on, they physically alter their shape, ramp up their activity, and broadcast chemical distress calls to summon even more platelets to the scene. Together, they clump into a soft, initial plug. While this platelet aggregation happens incredibly fast, it lacks the structural integrity to handle every type of wound on its own. It desperately requires backup. That crucial reinforcement is delivered by the coagulation cascade. This is a complex chain of biochemical events where dormant blood proteins, known as clotting factors, wake up and activate each other in a highly specific order. The term COCO perfectly captures this dynamic, as every single step triggers the next, much like a silent, microscopic line of tumbling dominoes. Except these dominoes are suspended in plasma and taking their jobs very seriously. The ultimate objective of this domino effect is to generate thrombin, a powerful enzyme tasked with converting fibrinogen into fibrin. While fibrinogen dissolves easily in the bloodstream, fibrin behaves entirely differently. It spins into long, tough strands that interlock to create a dense net. This microscopic netting wraps around and weaves through the fragile platelet plug, snaring red blood cells and other debris to upgrade the soft cluster into a robust, stable clot. Fibrin truly stands out as one of the body's most unsung, practical materials. It might lack the glamour of the brain or the heart, but without this biological netting stitched directly over the damage to hold the patch in place, even the tiniest paper cut could become a life-threatening emergency. Calcium also plays an indispensable role across multiple phases of this coagulation process. It enables the clotting factors to properly bind to cellular surfaces and interact as intended. Without adequate calcium, the entire cascade grinds to a halt. This highlights why blood clotting is never just a single event, but rather a highly coordinated chemical symphony involving minerals, proteins, blood cells, injured tissues, and vessel walls. The liver acts as the central command for this system, manufacturing the majority of the clotting factors circulating in your bloodstream. Furthermore, several of these vital proteins rely heavily on vitamin K for their proper synthesis. Vitamin K allows the liver to produce clotting proteins in a specific configuration that can successfully bind calcium and do their jobs. This biochemical dependencies explains the scientific significance of vitamin K in coagulation, and it is exactly why liver disease can severely compromise your body's ability to stop bleeding. So, while the clot physically forms at the site of the injury, its core ingredients were quietly fabricated in the liver long before you ever suffered that scrape, cut, or bruise. As powerful as this coagulation system must be, it also requires strict limitations. Inadequate clotting leads to perilous hemorrhaging. If the seal is too weak, blood loss simply continues, turning minor scrapes into major medical crises when the system is impaired. Disorders like hemophilia perfectly illustrate the critical importance of individual clotting factors, as missing or diminished proteins in these patients make forming stable clots incredibly difficult. Conversely, excessive clotting creates a completely different set of hazards. When blood coagulates inside a vessel where it should remain fluid, it obstructs circulation. A rogue clot forming in an inappropriate location is termed a thrombus, and the resulting thrombosis can choke off oxygen supplies to vital tissues. If a piece of this thrombus breaks free and rides the bloodstream to lodge elsewhere, it becomes an embolus. This dual nature makes coagulation both a life-saving shield and a potential internal threat, as the exact same mechanism that stops a bleeding wound can cause severe harm if triggered in the wrong spot. To prevent unwanted clots, your body employs several clever safeguards. Healthy endothelial cells line the blood vessels, keeping the interior surfaces slick and naturally resistant to coagulation. Built-in anticoagulant systems actively put the brakes on the clotting cascade, while the continuous rush of blood flow dilutes and sweeps away activated factors before they can spread too far. Eventually, once the underlying tissue has stabilized, the body dismantles the clot through fibrinolysis, deploying an enzyme called plasmin to digest the fibrin mesh. A successful clot is strictly local. It forms exactly where required, holds the line just long enough, and then gracefully dissolves as true repair takes over. This fundamental logic manifests differently depending on the injury's location. On the skin surface, a clot dries out, mingling with dead cells and debris to create a scab. Far from being just old, inert blood sitting on your skin, a scab is an active, protective shield that minimizes further bleeding, blocks external pathogens, and shelters the delicate new tissue growing beneath it. An internal clot, however, tells a different story. Hidden beneath the skin or inside a vessel, it lacks air exposure and never forms a dry crust. Take a bruise, for instance. Tiny subcutaneous vessels rupture, leaking blood into the surrounding tissue. Coagulation steps in to cap the microbleeds, while immune cells and enzymes subsequently break down and clear away the trapped blood. The shifting colors of a bruise visually map the body's gradual breakdown of hemoglobin and other blood components. It might not be conventionally pretty, but it is remarkably tidy in its own slow, purple to greenish yellow way. Our modern grasp of abnormal clotting owes a great deal to the 19th century physician Rudolf Virchow. He conceptualized Virchow's triad, which outlines 3 primary conditions that elevate the risk of thrombosis: altered blood flow, vessel wall injury, and shifts in blood composition. Sluggish or chaotic blood flow increases clotting odds. Damage to the vessel lining exposes pro-clotting surfaces, and chemical changes within the blood itself can make it overly eager to coagulate. Virchow's triad remains highly relevant today because it proves that clotting is not solely about the blood. It is fundamentally about the dynamic relationship between the flowing fluid, the living blood vessels, and the overall chemical environment of the body. A clot is never just a random lump. It is a direct physiological response to specific local conditions. During standard wound healing, coagulation stands as one of the very first restorative actions your body takes. It seals the breach, stabilizes the area, and provides crucial protection. It buys time for immune defenders to arrive, offers a physical scaffold for tissue cells to navigate, and allows the body to shift gears from frantic emergency response to organized cleanup and reconstruction. A scab might look incredibly simple, almost like the conclusion of the injury, but beneath that crusty exterior, the real work is only just getting started. The temporary seal has successfully completed its primary mission. The bleeding has slowed and the breach is covered. Now the deeper, more complex phases of healing can commence as inflammation rolls in, not as a biological mistake, but as a highly controlled fire designed to clear the path for true regeneration. Despite this vital role, inflammation usually gets a pretty bad rap. People tend to view it as nothing more than a biological annoyance, a puffy, irritated mistake that the body somehow failed to stop. In reality, this response is far from an error. It stands out as one of our most essential mechanisms for fixing damage. Whether dealing with an infection, physical trauma, or general irritation, this carefully managed reaction transforms an injured zone into a prime environment for recovery. You already know the classic symptoms. Think about the red rim around the edges of a fresh cut, the hot puffiness of a twisted ankle, the ache of a tender bruise, or the scratchy irritation of a sore throat. While these feelings are definitely unpleasant, they happen for very specific reasons. The red hue comes from a surge in local blood circulation. That same rush of blood, combined with intense chemical reactions, generates the noticeable heat. Puffiness occurs because fluid and defensive cells flood into the harmed tissue. Meanwhile, the area feels sore because nerve endings heighten their sensitivity, basically forcing you to protect the injured spot. Medical professionals across history have categorized these exact symptoms using traditional Latin terminology. Rubor translates to redness, cadort means heat, tumor refers to swelling, and dolor signifies pain. Eventually, experts added a fifth indicator, functia lacer, which describes a loss of normal function. Simply put, an inflamed body part gets red, hot, puffy, sore, and difficult to use. You might struggle to bend a swollen finger, or a bad knee will refuse to act like everything is fine. Your body isn't overreacting. It is actively limiting your movement to prevent extra damage while it organizes the healing process. This entire sequence kicks off when harmed cells broadcast chemical distress signals. These alerts draw in defensive cells and alter how local blood vessels operate. Even after a blood clot successfully plugs a breach, a massive biological mess remains. The site might be crawling with microbes, littered with dead cellular debris, leaking fluids, and featuring a broken extracellular matrix, the supportive scaffolding that holds cells together. To fix this, the zone requires thorough cleaning, strict protection, and careful management. The first major defenders to show up are neutrophils. Acting as the body's rapid response team, these cells patrol the bloodstream and rush straight into compromised tissue. Their primary mission is to neutralize microbes and lock down immediate dangers by swallowing pathogens and releasing germ-killing chemicals. However, neutrophils lack a gentle touch. Think of them as emergency workers wearing heavy work boots. They are absolutely critical when they first arrive, but if they stick around too long or get overly aggressive, their harsh chemicals can accidentally harm healthy tissue. This exact scenario highlights why the inflammatory response requires strict regulation. It must pack enough punch to fight off threats without turning the healing zone into a chaotic war zone that nobody cleans up afterward. Next, macrophages enter the scene to play an equally vital role. Fittingly translating to large eaters, these cells swallow up dead tissue, microbes, and random debris through a mechanism known as phagocytosis. This cellular eating process was famously brought to light by Elie Metchnikoff, a pioneering researcher from the late 19th and early 20th centuries. By watching cells physically consume foreign particles, he proved that our immune defense relies on active, living cells devouring threats, rather than just relying on mysterious substances floating in our blood. But macrophages do much more than just take out the trash. They also manage the reconstruction effort. During the initial stages, they act aggressively to wipe out pathogens and eliminate danger. Once the area is sufficiently cleaned, however, they switch gears. They start releasing chemical messages that guide fibroblasts, stimulate new blood vessel formation, boost collagen creation, and reshape the tissue. Essentially, these large eaters dictate the exact moment the body transitions from fighting off threats to rebuilding the structure. That transition is absolutely crucial because inflammation is meant to follow a specific rhythm. It sparks, peaks, does its job, and then actively resolves. This resolution phase isn't just the body losing interest, it is a highly coordinated shutdown. Chemical messages shift, the mass recruitment of defensive cells halts, spent neutrophils get cleared out, macrophages soothe the tissue, and local cells start reconstructing the area to restore equilibrium. This is precisely why acute inflammation is so beneficial. It stops infections from a simple splinter, kicks off recovery for a pulled muscle, and rapidly deploys defenders against wound bacteria. Without it, our ability to heal and survive would be severely compromised. The trouble starts when this reaction lingers, burns too hot, or triggers without a real threat. Unlike the brief flare-up of a standard cut, chronic inflammation can drag on for weeks, months, or even years, slowly degrading healthy tissue. For instance, the persistent joint swelling seen in rheumatoid arthritis steadily destroys bone and cartilage. Constant irritation keeps defensive cells in overdrive, stalling the normal healing cycle. It is exactly like a controlled burn that forgets to stop, eventually consuming the very forest it was supposed to protect. A small, managed fire clears away dead brush to let new plants thrive, but a wild blaze destroys everything. Inflammation operates on the exact same principle. It isn't inherently good or evil. It is simply a powerful instrument that requires strict limits. This perspective also explains why those annoying physical symptoms are actually helpful. The redness delivers extra blood, the heat reflects high metabolic activity, the swelling transports vital proteins and defenders, the soreness demands rest, and the stiffness prevents further injury. None of this feels particularly poetic when you stub your toe on furniture in the dark, but your biology is genuinely doing its absolute best under difficult domestic circumstances. Once a clot seals the initial breach, the inflammatory response dictates the next steps. It summons the cleanup crews, modifies blood flow, and broadcasts chemical blueprints across the damaged zone. By removing unusable debris and highlighting what needs fixing, it readies the site for reconstruction. You simply cannot construct new tissue on top of a chaotic mess. The area must be sorted, defended, and cleaned first. Inflammation acts as that organizing flame. When functioning perfectly, it burns hot and fast, clearing the wreckage without destroying the foundation. Afterward, it gently fades away, passing the baton to the slower, more deliberate phases of tissue repair. Underneath all that puffiness and redness, your body isn't just panicking. It is carefully calculating the journey from destruction to recovery, guided by countless chemical messages and roaming defensive cells. Following those chemical messages, the body's first order of business isn't actually construction, it is cleanup. Before any rebuilding can occur, the biological crew must tidy up the wreckage. While this might sound almost too ordinary for a process as complex as healing, it remains one of the most important truths in recovery. You simply cannot lay down new tissue properly over a confused mixture of dead cells, trapped bacteria, broken fibers, leaking fluids, clotted material, and chemical debris. A wound is not merely an empty gap waiting to be filled. It is a highly disturbed landscape, and before construction begins, the body must clear the ground. This is why healing is not just about building. It is equally about cleaning, sorting, recycling, and removing what no longer belongs. In medicine, removing damaged, dead, or contaminated tissue is called debridement. While trained professionals perform debridement clinically to help serious wounds heal, the body executes its own microscopic version constantly. Immune cells move into the damaged tissue, and enzymes break down material that cannot be reused. Dead cells are cleared, microbes are attacked, and broken tissue fragments are dismantled, carried away, or prepped for recycling. It is not glamorous work. It is the biological equivalent of clearing rubble after a storm, except the rubble is made of cells, proteins, blood components, and the occasional bacterium having a very bad afternoon. Neutrophils are often the first major cleanup and defense cells to arrive. These abundant, fast immune cells travel in the blood, moving quickly into damaged or infected tissue. Their speed is vital because wounds expose the body to microbes, and microbes do not wait politely while the repair crew organizes. Neutrophils engulf bacteria and release antimicrobial substances, enzymes, and reactive molecules to destroy early invaders. This makes them extremely valuable in reducing the risk of a wound becoming an infection doorway, but neutrophils are powerful in a slightly rough way. The same chemicals that damage microbes can harm nearby healthy tissue if released too long or in the wrong amount. Therefore, inflammation and cleanup must be controlled. The body needs neutrophils to arrive quickly, act strongly, and then be cleared away. If they linger, the cleanup can damage the room it meant to restore. Once neutrophils finish the urgent early work, macrophages become increasingly important. These immune cells have a remarkable range of duties, engulfing bacteria, digesting dead cells, removing fragments, releasing chemical signals, and guiding tissue toward repair. Their name means large eaters, a rare scientific term that says exactly what it means before quietly going back to work. A key process macrophages perform is efferocytosis, the clearing of dead or dying cells, especially those undergoing controlled self-removal. Dead cells cannot be left scattered. If they break apart uncontrollably, their contents increase inflammation and irritate the area. When macrophages clear dead cells through efferocytosis, they do more than remove waste. The act of swallowing and processing dead cells calms inflammation, shifting macrophages towards signals that encourage repair rather than attack. Cleanup thus becomes a turning point, moving the wound from emergency defense toward rebuilding. This is one of healing's most elegant parts. The body doesn't remove debris just because it is untidy. It removes it because the material's presence changes the wound's chemical mood. A site filled with broken cells and microbial signals stays inflammatory, but a site where dead cells are cleared can begin to soften into repair. As that clearing process softens the injury site, we must look at the environment surrounding all this cellular action, the extracellular mates. Far from being mere biological bubble wrap, this supportive scaffold provides tissues with essential stretch, strength, organization, and physical structure. Furthermore, it acts as a vault for chemical cues that dictate cellular growth, division, movement, and healing. This intricate network relies on a few key ingredients. Collagen delivers crucial structural integrity to scar tissue, bones, ligaments, tendons, and skin. Meanwhile, elastin grants blood vessels, lungs, and skin the ability to snap back and stretch. During healing, fibronectin guides cells to attach, migrate, and arrange themselves properly. Additionally, proteoglycans trap moisture, dictating tissue resilience and texture. Combined, these elements create a dynamic, living landscape rather than a static cage. Naturally, when an injury occurs, this matrix takes a hit. Structural proteins get sliced, collagen fibers rip, and stored chemical instructions are altered or spilled. Consequently, the body must evaluate and reconstruct this broken framework, breaking down certain sections, recycling others, and replacing the rest. Incoming cells require both directional cues and a physical pathway. Without a functional scaffold, healing stalls. Today's studies uncover the sheer variety of cellular players involved in this reconstruction. Through massive cell mapping initiatives, organizations like the Wellcome Sanger Institute help researchers identify the diverse cellular cast in injured and healthy states. Their findings prove recovery isn't driven by a single superhero cell wearing a microscopic cape. Instead, it demands massive teamwork from skin cells, nerve-associated cells, fibroblasts, blood vessel cells, and immune defenders. This mapping also clarifies why healing looks different depending on the body part. Nerves, tendons, bones, muscles, the liver and skins all boast unique cellular neighborhoods. Each area features distinct blood flow, specialized stem cell pools, specific support cells, and custom matrix architectures. While the fundamental blueprint of clearing debris and rebuilding remains constant, local execution changes drastically. Inside a mending wound, the body faces a delicate tightrope walk. It must eliminate ruined material while sparing healthy tissue and fight microbes without triggering chronic inflammation. Clearing dead cells must happen gently to promote calm, just as the matrix needs targeted demolition alongside strategic reconstruction. This is a highly calibrated balancing act, far beyond a basic biological sweep. This meticulous cleaning stage explains why injuries don't magically transform into fresh tissue overnight. The body takes its time out of pure necessity. If it rushed and built over leftover debris, the result would be messy, weak, and prone to infection. The site must be organized, softened, cleared, and defended first. Only after this prep work can the visual magic start. As the scaffold gets prepped for fresh growth and inflammatory alarms quiet down, skin cells finally migrate across the top. Fibroblasts deposit brand new structural proteins, and blood vessels push into the healing zone. Ultimately, the body transitions from a demolition crew into a construction team, gradually restoring the broken surface to a unified whole. As this biological construction crew gets to work, they are rebuilding what we often take for granted: our skin. Because it constantly wraps around us, greeting the environment every second, we tend to overlook its extraordinary nature. Far from being a simple wrapper, it stands as our most expansive shield. This dynamic frontier separates our internal universe from the external chaos. It locks moisture inside, blocks countless invaders, manages our internal thermostat, registers physical sensations like pain and touch, generates sweat, sprouts hair, and quietly patches itself up whenever damage occurs. Rather than a mere sheet of tissue, it is a complex metropolis packed with microscopic systems, blood vessels, nerve endings, glands, and diverse cellular layers. The outermost shield is known as the epidermis. This surface armor relies heavily on specialized cells named keratinocytes. These tiny workers manufacture keratin, a resilient protein responsible for waterproofing and structural toughness. In a continuous cycle of renewal, fresh cells push upward from the deeper epidermal layers, eventually reaching the top to flake off. In a rather unglamorous but biologically brilliant process, you constantly shed microscopic fragments of yourself into the environment. A nightmare for your upholstery, but a triumph of cellular turnover. Sharing this outer neighborhood are melanocytes. These specific cells synthesize melanin, the natural dye dictating your complexion while simultaneously defending against solar radiation. While melanin doesn't grant total immunity to sun damage, it successfully absorbs and deflects a portion of ultraviolet rays, thereby shielding cellular DNA from harmful mutations. Diving just below the epidermis, we find the dermis. This deeper zone is significantly thicker and far more densely packed. Here, elastin and collagen fibers weave together to provide elasticity and durability. This layer houses a vast capillary network, delivering vital nutrients and oxygen, alongside nerves detecting everything from a soft breeze to intense heat, pressure, and itching. Additionally, you will find sweat glands for temperature control and hair follicles, which not only grow hair but also stash crucial cells needed for future injury repair. Whenever this intricate shield is breached, the body scrambles to secure the perimeter. A cut is far more than a cosmetic flaw. It represents a critical failure in our primary defense line, risking severe moisture loss, bacterial invasion, and exposure of vulnerable internal tissues. To counter this, the system immediately plugs the leak with a blood clot, dispatches immune forces to sweep away hazardous debris, and initiates the gradual reconstruction of the barrier. A crucial phase of this reconstruction is called re-epithelialization. During this stage, epithelial workers, primarily keratinocytes, slide across the injury to seal the breach, instead of waiting for the underlying gap to fill up. These cells actively migrate inward from the wound's borders and even from nearby hair follicles, spreading out to forge a fresh surface layer. Fascinatingly, this cellular migration occurs right beneath the scab. While the scab grabs all the visual attention, it merely acts as a temporary biological tarp. Think of it as a construction site roof rather than the finished structure. Beneath that crusty exterior, immune cells are still cleaning up, deeper tissues are knitting together, and fresh skin is crawling across the gap. Consequently, picking at a scab is a fantastic way to frustrate your own biology. That crusty cover is actively shielding the fragile new tissue. Ripping it off prematurely can rupture delicate new blood vessels, disrupt the migrating cellular workforce, invite unwanted bacteria, and severely delay the hidden progress. Your body will eventually fix the mess, but it certainly resents the unnecessary administrative setback. While the surface team handles the top layer, fibroblasts descend into the deeper wound bed. These connective tissue specialists are responsible for manufacturing collagen and other components of the extracellular matrix. This matrix acts as the essential structural scaffolding that supports surrounding cells during the healing process. By laying down these foundational materials, fibroblasts grant the newly forming tissue its necessary tensile strength. Initially, this internal framework lacks the neat organization of healthy tissue, resembling a rushed, temporary scaffold rather than a polished architectural masterpiece. Collagen plays the starring role here, providing the brute strength required to keep the healing wound from tearing apart. As weeks pass, this collagen network is continuously remodeled, tightened, and reinforced. However, the repaired area rarely achieves the exact structural perfection or full strength of the original tissue. The healing outcome is undeniably impressive, even if it falls slightly short of a flawless restoration. Yet, as this new tissue takes shape, it desperately requires a fresh delivery network for oxygen and nutrients. This vital need for a renewed blood supply is exactly where angiogenesis steps into the spotlight. Angiogenesis is simply the creation of fresh blood vessels branching off from older ones. Recovering tissue demands a steady delivery of chemical signals, immune defenders, nutrients, and oxygen. Microscopic new vessels sprout directly into the damaged area to meet these demands. This internal construction explains why a healing wound feels tender and takes on a pinkish hue. Far from mere irritation, the site is actively being resupplied, rebuilt, and reconnected. That rosy color indicates boosted blood flow, while soreness stems from fragile new tissue, active inflammatory messengers, and sensitive nerve endings. As fresh matrix components and cells lock into position, the healing spot might appear delicate, slightly damp, or somewhat elevated. This temporary phase plays a crucial role. Your body isn't just slapping a patch over the injury. It is actively reconstructing a dynamic, living shield. Our historical grasp of tissues outside the body was heavily influenced by Alexis Carrel, a 20th century surgeon pioneering early wound studies and tissue cultures. While his broader legacy and personal views remain complex, his experiments undeniably propelled researchers to investigate how tissues repair, expand, and survive in regulated environments. Today, wound biology has vastly outgrown those initial experiments. Researchers now leverage tissue engineering, genetics, advanced imaging, molecular signaling, and cellular biology to decode the repair process with incredible precision. This contemporary knowledge reveals that even the most insignificant scab involves a massive biological cascade. First, a blood clot creates a temporary plug. Next, inflammation cleans and protects the site, allowing macrophages and other immune defenders to clear away debris. After that, keratinocytes travel across the gap while fibroblasts deposit fresh collagen. Simultaneously, new blood vessels sprout, the extracellular matrix gets remodeled, and recovering nerves heighten their sensitivity to the microscopic cells experiencing it. A minor cut is anything but minor. It represents a massive neighborhood renovation requiring precise timing, structural replacements, signal interpretation, and barrier restoration. To the naked eye, it might just look like a tiny scab on your finger, but internally, it is a brilliantly orchestrated mission to re-establish the boundary between you and the outside environment. Once this mission wraps up, the skin might heal flawlessly, or it could leave a lasting souvenir like a pale streak, a raised bump, or a subtle scar, proving that healing doesn't always mean perfectly recreating the original blueprint. Instead of viewing a scar as a biological failure, think of it as a deliberate strategic decision. Obviously, there isn't a microscopic construction foreman in a hard hat standing on your epidermis, consciously opting for a rushed, slightly bumpy finish. Yet, from an evolutionary standpoint, forming a scar represents a vital trade-off. When faced with a hostile environment packed with bacteria, physical friction, UV rays, constant motion, and sharp furniture edges, your body values rapid, robust closure over aesthetic perfection. Ideally, a flawless recovery would restore every single detail, matching the exact color, texture, and tensile strength, while fully regenerating sweat glands, nerve endings, hair follicles, and natural elasticity. However, when dealing with significant trauma, particularly deep cuts, your system abandons meticulous architectural plans. Instead, it simply plugs the hole, re-establishes the protective shield, and fortifies the zone. It favors staying alive over looking flawless, a highly pragmatic approach, even if it leaves us cosmetically disappointed. The primary building block for these biological patches is collagen. As the most plentiful protein in human anatomy, collagen delivers essential structural support to everything from bones and blood vessels to ligaments, tendons, and skin. Under healthy conditions, these protein fibers weave together in a neat basket weave layout, allowing your skin to stretch and move fluidly. But when an injury strikes, specialized cells called fibroblasts migrate into the trauma zone to start manufacturing fresh collagen and extracellular matrix components. Because this initial phase is all about speed, the newly deposited fibers end up thick, chaotic, and poorly organized compared to the surrounding tissue. This isn't cellular negligence. Stabilizing the damage simply takes absolute precedence. leaving zero time to recreate the intricate microscopic weave. Eventually, the site transitions into a remodeling stage. The body breaks down portions of the initial chaotic collagen and replaces it with fresh fibers that gradually align with your skin's natural tension lines. Throughout this period, which can span months or even years, the mark might flatten out, soften up, and lose its prominence. Fresh scars often appear raised and red due to active healing cells and extra blood vessels. As remodeling progresses, these features fade into a paler, flatter appearance. Still, no matter how much it matures, the patched area will never perfectly mirror untouched skin. Fibroblasts remain the absolute MVPs of this operation, constructing the physical scaffolding of the wound by pumping out fibronectin, collagen, and other matrix materials to secure the damaged site. A subset of these workers actually transforms into myofibroblasts. These unique variants possess contractile abilities similar to smooth muscle cells. By physically pulling the wound's margins inward, they shrink the open gap, meaning less new tissue is required. While this shrinking action is incredibly helpful for sealing large spaces, it requires strict regulation. If the pulling force goes overboard, often seen in severe burns, it can severely limit joint mobility. Ultimately, your body's healing capacity is incredibly potent, but sheer power doesn't guarantee a flawless result. The resulting patch always misses several key features of regular skin. You won't find regenerated hair follicles or sweat glands in the area. The surface might feel unusually tight, sunken, raised, shiny, or overly smooth. The haphazard collagen layout also diminishes local flexibility. Furthermore, nerve endings often reconnect imperfectly, leaving the spot feeling completely numb, hypersensitive, unexpectedly itchy, or weirdly noticeable at inconvenient moments. Consequently, the mark serves as a permanent visual diary of your trauma. Your system successfully re-established a tough protective cover, but skipped recreating the intricate, living ecosystem of the original tissue. It functions perfectly as a shield, yet remains distinctly recognizable as a patch. Occasionally, the healing mechanism gets overzealous and produces excess tissue. A hypertrophic scar occurs when collagen generation goes into overdrive, resulting in a thickened, elevated mark that remains confined to the initial injury borders and often improves with time. A keloid, however, takes this overproduction to the extreme. It aggressively expands past the original wound's margins, invading surrounding healthy skin. These growths can be painful, incredibly itchy, firm, and stubbornly permanent, perfectly illustrating how the healing cascade can accidentally overbuild. This excessive tissue generation isn't just your body exhibiting terrible interior design skills. Rather, it highlights the mind-boggling complexity of cellular communication. The final amount and structure of collagen depend on a delicate dance between genetics, mechanical stress, local inflammation, growth factors, immune responses, and fibroblast activity. Depending on your unique biology and the specific body part involved, this intricate balancing act can easily tip toward excessive scarring. Therefore, a scar might represent an underwhelming restoration, an over-enthusiastic rebuild, or simply a highly practical middle ground. The gap seals, the protective wall is rebuilt, and the area becomes significantly tougher than it was when open, even if it sacrifices some flexibility. And this reality naturally leads us to a much bigger, far more enigmatic question. That question is simply this: why do humans so frequently end up with scars, while certain animals can flawlessly regenerate missing body parts? To understand this, we have to look at the long scientific history of regeneration research. Take Thomas Hunt Morgan, for instance. While he is much better known for his foundational genetics work using fruit flies, he also extensively studied regeneration in animals like planarians. These These tiny flatworms possess absolutely astonishing regenerative talents. Given the right environmental conditions, even small fragments of a planarian can regrow entirely missing structures, showcasing a biological playbook that is vastly different from standard human wound healing. But before we dive deep into animal superpowers, let's talk about our own strategy: scarring. A scar is essentially a biological compromise. When you get a deep skin injury, suffer major nerve damage, experience heart muscle loss after a heart attack, or lose a limb, human repair hits a wall. Instead of perfectly rebuilding, we patch the breach. A fast-forming scar seals the wound, drastically cutting down the risk of infection. From an evolutionary standpoint, a scar might not win any beauty contests, but it is good enough to keep you alive. And in biology, good enough is an incredibly powerful concept. Our bodies aren't engineered for absolute perfection. They are shaped by the relentless pressures of survival, reproduction, energy constraints, injury risks, infection pressures, and the physical trade-offs of the real world. Whether a scar is pale, raised, smooth, tight, tender, or practically invisible, it tells a story. It might mark a forgotten childhood fall, a surgical procedure, a burn, an accident, or a scrape. But beneath the surface, it represents a massive coordinated effort involving clotting, inflammation, immune cells, fibroblasts, collagen, blood vessels, and tissue remodeling. It isn't a failure etched into your skin. It is survival written in collagen. It restores the barrier and provides enough strength to keep going, even if that quick closure creates a fibrous wall that blocks the elaborate rebuilding seen in other species. This naturally begs the question: if our bodies can heal so much, why can't they just rebuild everything exactly as it was? Why does skin scar instead of returning perfectly? Why does a broken bone knit together, but a lost finger usually stays gone? In the natural world, true regeneration absolutely exists, but it is distributed very unevenly across the tree of life. Let's look at salamanders, which are legendary for regrowing entire limbs. If a salamander loses part of a leg, it can perfectly reconstruct the bone, muscle, nerves, blood vessels, skin, and connective tissue in the exact right layout. The axolotl, a specific type of salamander heavily featured in regeneration research, is particularly mind-blowing. They can regrow limbs, fix parts of the heart, restore sections of the spinal cord, and heal wounds with significantly less scarring than mammals. Then we have those incredible planarians we mentioned earlier. Their secret weapon is a special population of adult stem cells known as neoblasts, which can transform them into a wide variety of cell types. Because of these neoblasts, a tiny snippet of a planarian can reconstruct missing body parts with such flawless accuracy that human wound healing looks rather like patching a hole in a wall with a tea towel and just hoping your guests don't notice. Zebrafish also boast serious regenerative abilities, capable of repairing damaged fins, parts of the heart and nervous system tissues. They are especially vital to regeneration biology because, unlike flatworms, they are vertebrates just like us. This makes them highly useful for studying the specific genetic and cellular signals that dictate why some creatures regenerate while others mainly scar. The real magic in limb regeneration happens thanks to a specialized structure called the blastema. A blastema is a concentrated mass of cells that gathers near the site of injury in animals capable of strong regeneration. These are not just random repair materials. They shift into a highly flexible state, multiply rapidly, and then help form the exact right tissues in the exact right positions. Bone must become bone, muscle must become muscle, nerves must reconnect, and skin must cover the surface. Rebuilding a limb isn't like just pouring plaster into a crack. A limb is a complex three-dimensional structure requiring precise patterns, directional growth, joints, blood supply, and specific tissue relationships. Regeneration demands not just growth, but intricate guidance. The cells must know where they are, what they should become, and exactly when to stop. So why do humans and other mammals mostly just scar instead of pulling off this quiet magic? First, consider the immune system. Mammalian immune responses are incredibly fast, powerful, and highly developed, which is fantastic for defending warm-blooded, active animals against infections. However, this intense inflammatory response heavily encourages scar formation. Sealing the wound rapidly prevents blood loss and keeps microbes out, but it may reduce the opportunity for slower, more complete regeneration. Second, there is the sheer complexity of our tissues. Human limbs are large, mechanically demanding structures packed with bones, tendons, ligaments, blood vessels, nerves, muscles, skin, and specialized sensory systems. Reconstructing all of that would demand extraordinary coordination. The body would have to restart developmental programs inside an adult tissue environment without accidentally creating disorder. Third, there is the cancer risk. Regeneration requires cells to divide, move, change their identities, and respond to growth signals. While highly useful when controlled, these abilities are dangerous when uncontrolled. Mammals have evolved robust systems to prevent inappropriate cell division because uncontrolled growth leads to cancer. Unfortunately, a body that is exceptionally good at stopping dangerous growth might also be less able to restart the flexible growth programs required for full regeneration. Ultimately, evolution does not always favor the most impressive repair jobs. It favors what works well enough for survival and reproduction in a particular environment. A quickly closed, scarred wound keeps the infection out and the blood in. It might not be elegant, but biology is never above taking a practical shortcut. After all, evolution has produced many biological wonders, but it has also produced the human knee. Perfection was clearly not the only design goal. Still, humans do regenerate in limited ways. The liver is the most famous example. After partial removal or injury, the liver can regrow a significant amount of its mass, largely through the division of remaining liver cells. It isn't rebuilding an intricate external shape with bones and joints like a limb, but restoring that tissue mass is undeniably impressive. Our skin renews continually, with new cells forming in the deeper layers of the epidermis and moving upward as older cells are shed. Our blood is constantly renewed from stem cells in the bone marrow, producing red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets throughout life. Our bones can heal fractures with remarkable strength, forming temporary repair tissue and then remodeling it over time. Even the lining of the intestine renews rapidly to handle constant wear from digestion, microbes, and chemical exposure. These examples prove that the human body is not poor at renewal. It is simply selective. Some tissues replace themselves often, and some repair strongly after damage. But others, like heart muscle, many parts of the nervous system, and complex lost structures such as limbs, simply do not regenerate well in humans. Since our bodies struggle to rebuild those complex structures, we must look at the incredible potential of stem cells. These unique building blocks possess the amazing ability to self-renew and generate specialized cell varieties. However, not every stem cell operates identically. Take adult stem cells, for instance. You will find them residing in your muscles, intestines, skin, and bone marrow, dedicating themselves to fixing those specific regions. Their transformative abilities are generally quite restricted. A blood-forming stem cell in your marrow will exclusively generate new blood cells. It certainly will not sprout a replacement kneecap, no matter how handy that would be. Embryonic stem cells play by entirely different rules. Originating from early-stage embryos, these remarkable cells can develop into virtually any cellular format in the body. While this massive versatility offers immense scientific power, it simultaneously introduces deep ethical complexities. Consequently, their application is strictly controlled and continues to spark intense debates. Then we have induced pluripotent stem cells, which revolutionized the landscape from another angle. In 2006, Japanese researcher Shinya Yamanaka and his team demonstrated that introducing specific factors could reprogram fully mature cells back into a stem cell-like condition. This breakthrough proved that a cell's identity is not permanently locked in place. Given the perfect laboratory environment, a developed cell can be coaxed backward into a more flexible state. Yamanaka's discoveries reshaped regenerative medicine, unlocking fresh avenues for drug testing, disease research, developmental modeling, and creating replacement tissues. This did not mean physicians could instantly regrow amputated limbs on demand, say by next Tuesday. Biology is vastly more intricate than that, but it brilliantly illustrated that cellular instruction manuals can undergo profound resets. Therefore, the divide between true regeneration and simple scarring is not just about whether the body knows how to heal. It hinges on evolutionary history, cancer prevention, tissue patterning, cellular flexibility, immune reactions, timing, and the immediate wound environment. Humans simply are not engineered for spectacular, full limb regrowth. Instead, our biology prioritizes continuous upkeep, swift wound sealing, targeted renewal, and survival-focused repairs that are good enough rather than flawless. While a scar might look less spectacular than a regenerated arm, it narrates the exact same profound biological tale. Living organisms perpetually balance safety against restoration, control against rebuilding, and the ideal scenario against whatever can be done fast enough to sustain life. Throughout this endless negotiation, stem cells act as our most vital biological reserves. Resting quietly within designated tissues, they rejuvenate our intestines, muscles, skin, and blood, not through magic, but as meticulously managed engines for future healing. Building on that meticulous management, we must dispel a common myth. People frequently describe stem cells as though they are microscopic miracle workers. The actual truth is far more fascinating and heavily regulated. Rather than acting like magical healing powder, scattered across your system during a crisis, these are living entities with specific talents, operating in exact locations and reacting to precise biological cues. Certain varieties possess the knack for self-renewal over extended durations. Others specialize in manufacturing distinct cell types, while some focus on upkeep for tissues experiencing constant friction. Many simply hibernate until physical trauma, mechanical stress, or routine cellular turnover demands their attention. Within a mature human, these cells function as highly specialized biological backup generators. You will find them stationed in areas like the skeletal muscle, intestinal tract, skin, and bone marrow, actively facilitating tissue replacement. They certainly do not roam aimlessly through your bloodstream searching for broken things to fix, much like tiny handymen driving ridiculously miniature work vans. Instead, the vast majority of adult stem cells reside in highly specialized microenvironments known as niches. Think of a niche as the immediate cellular community, dictating how a stem cell behaves. This local environment delivers the exact instructions required to remain dormant, start dividing, or differentiate into specific cell lineages. Such strict oversight is absolutely vital. A biological backup system only provides value when properly managed. Insufficient action leads to failed tissue regeneration, whereas excessive proliferation drastically raises the danger of chaotic, disordered cellular growth. Your physiology requires these cells to be highly adaptable, yet never careless. To see this regulation in action, look no further than the bone marrow. This spongy tissue houses hematopoietic stem cells, a term that simply translates to blood forming. These specific progenitors generate every primary cellular component found in your circulation. This single source yields platelets, white blood cells, and red blood cells. The red blood cells are responsible for transporting oxygen from your respiratory system to every distant tissue. They are absolutely stuffed with hemoglobin, the unique protein responsible for grabbing onto oxygen molecules and giving your blood its characteristic crimson hue. Because red blood cells have a limited lifespan, your body must manufacture fresh ones without pause. Meanwhile, white blood cells serve as the cornerstone of your immune arsenal, allowing your system to identify pathogens, react to physical trauma, retain memories of previous invaders, and sweep away cellular debris. Then you have platelets, which are actually tiny cellular fragments dedicated to the clotting process, effectively plugging up leaking blood vessels the moment bleeding starts. This entire intricate ballet relies entirely on the bone marrow's capacity to continuously churn out fresh blood components. On a daily basis, your physiology manufactures these cells in staggering quantities. While this might not look like a dramatic, visible recovery from a wound, it represents maintenance on a truly monumental scale, all concealed deep within your skeletal structure. The blood coursing through your veins is never a static inventory. It undergoes perpetual refreshing. The digestive tract provides another phenomenal illustration of swift cellular turnover. The inner lining of your gut endures an incredibly grueling existence. It is tasked with soaking up vital nutrients, handling harsh digestive enzymes alongside bile acids, communicating with trillions of resident bacteria, and shielding your internal systems from toxic compounds. Every single day, this lining battles mechanical friction, chemical strain, and intense microbial action. Consequently, it should come as no surprise that the cellular layer of the intestines undergoes frequent replacement. The stem cells responsible for this feat reside within tiny, gland-like pockets known as crypts. Emerging from these crypts, freshly minted cells migrate upward into the main lining, taking the place of older cells that naturally slough off. This rapid turnover preserves the crucial physical barrier separating your gut's contents from your internal biology, while also empowering the intestines to bounce back from standard wear and tear or specific injuries. The sheer velocity of this intestinal regeneration is precisely what makes the digestive system so biologically astounding. It simultaneously functions as a bustling frontier, a biochemical processing plant, a thriving microbial habitat, and an active construction zone. It also serves as a humble reminder that your body's most critical upkeep often occurs in areas lacking any outward aesthetic appeal. The biological world might not always be glamorous, but it is certainly never idle. Your skin similarly relies heavily on stem cells and continuously renewing cellular groups. Cells situated in the deeper strata of the epidermis generate fresh keratinocytes, which gradually travel to the surface as the older outermost layers flake away. Additionally, hair follicles harbor their own stem cell reserves, which not only drive hair production, but can also assist in patching up the skin following an injury. This dynamic system explains why your skin successfully defends itself against daily abrasions, severe dryness, constant friction, and environmental exposure. Finally, skeletal muscle boasts its own dedicated repair reserves. Muscle fibers consist of elongated, highly specialized cells engineered for contraction, making them susceptible to damage from intense workouts, physical strain, or direct trauma. Resting right next to these fibers are satellite cells, a distinct category of adult stem cells crucial for muscular recovery. Typically, these satellite cells remain completely dormant in the vicinity of the muscle fibers. However, When the muscle experiences stress or physical damage, they spring into action, multiplying to either mend the compromised fibers or supply entirely new muscular tissue. This exact mechanism drives the adaptations you experience after hitting the gym. When you engage in challenging or novel physical activities, microscopic tears form within the muscle tissue. Your physiology answers this disruption by triggering inflammation, sending out repair signals, synthesizing new proteins, and activating those satellite cells. Given sufficient downtime and proper fuel, the muscle ultimately adapts. It emerges more resilient, better coordinated, and significantly tougher against that specific physical stressor going forward. However, this does not imply that extreme soreness guarantees optimal healing, nor does it mean that inflicting maximum damage yields maximum gains. Your physical form favors smart, progressive loading over reckless, chaotic destruction. True muscular adaptation requires consistent stimulation, proper recovery, ample caloric energy, and patience. After all, even your microscopic cells prefer a sensible, well-planned schedule. Building on that need for a sensible schedule, think of stem cells as your body's built-in backup crew. They give specific tissues the power to constantly refresh and heal, yet their skills are highly specialized rather than limitless. For instance, hematopoietic stem cells strictly produce blood cells, intestinal stem cells focus on maintaining your gut lining, and satellite cells dedicate themselves to skeletal muscle. Their true strength lies in this perfect match to their environment, rather than some magical ability to transform into anything. Recognizing this boundary is crucial, especially since the public often gets an exaggerated view of stem cell science. Authentic research in this field stands as a cornerstone of modern biology, revolutionizing our grasp of regenerative therapies, organ modeling, immune disorders, blood diseases, tissue healing, and human development. A perfect example is the hematopoietic stem cell transplant, commonly called a bone marrow transplant, which is a proven treatment for severe immune issues and certain blood cancers. However, you can't trust every flashy advertisement. Plenty of commercial clinics falsely promise that stem cells can effortlessly reverse aging, rebuild joints, fix nerves, cure unrelated ailments, or inspire your body to act like it just read a motivational poster. The truth is that delivering safe therapies demands rigorous clinical trials, solid evidence, strict regulation, meticulous quality control, and long-term tracking. Because we are dealing with living treatments, these cells can sometimes act unpredictably. This is why the International Society for Stem Cell Research guides responsible clinical translation. They caution against unverified procedures while championing patient safety, ethical oversight, and solid proof. This careful stance doesn't ruin the excitement. It exists precisely because this science is incredibly potent and demands respect. Ultimately, you shouldn't view stem cells as either a magical fantasy or a total letdown. They aren't mystical cure-alls, but they aren't meaningless hype either. Instead, they act as highly regulated engines of renewal, guided by your age, local signals, tissue environment, injuries, and your body's drive for balance. Whether repairing muscle, supporting skin, refreshing the gut, or manufacturing blood, they prove your body holds secret reserves that are highly organized, strictly limited, and incredibly specific. Your capacity to heal is absolutely genuine, even if it isn't infinite. In fact, very few tissues demonstrate this quiet potential quite as beautifully as bone. From the outside, it looks like a solid, lifeless structure, yet it continuously senses physical stress, rebuilds after a fracture, and remodels its architecture throughout your entire life. While it might seem like nothing more than the body's quiet scaffolding, providing the shape, leverage, and protection needed to keep you from collapsing into a soft heap of opinions. this internal frame is far from inactive. Rather than being dead rock, your skeleton is a vibrant, living network packed with nerves, blood vessels, minerals, collagen, marrow, and highly active cells dedicated to constant construction and demolition. The rigid nature of your skeleton primarily stems from minerals like calcium phosphate, which organize into a crystalline structure known as hydroxyapatite to provide immense compressive strength. However, if bones were made of mineral alone, they would shatter easily. That is where collagen steps in. This flexible protein weaves through the mineral matrix, granting the tissue the elasticity required to withstand bending and resist cracking. By combining the rock-solid firmness of minerals with the resilient toughness of collagen, your body creates a material that is incredibly strong without being as brittle as a breadstick with ambitions. Deep inside many of these structures, you will find marrow, the bustling factory responsible for producing your blood cells. A vast network of blood vessels threads through the hard exterior to deliver essential oxygen and nutrients, while nerves stand guard to register pain and physical trauma. Maintaining this complex environment are three crucial types of specialized cells. First, you have the osteoblasts, the construction crew responsible for synthesizing new bone matrix and driving the mineralization process. Working in opposition are the osteoclasts, the demolition team that dissolves old or compromised tissue, freeing up valuable minerals for the bloodstream and making room for fresh growth. Finally, there are the osteocytes, mature cells trapped within the hardened matrix that act as mechanical sensors. They detect physical strain and chat with the other cells, directing exactly where the skeleton needs to be reinforced, preserved, or dismantled. This endless cycle of destruction and creation is known as bone remodeling, and it occurs continuously, even when you are perfectly healthy. Everyday movements cause microscopic wear and tear, which the body swiftly patches up while adjusting the skeleton's density to match your age, activity levels, and physical forces. It is essentially a slow, continuous conversation between physical load and biological structure. When a bone actually snaps, this dynamic living nature is put on full display. A fracture is not just a crack in a dry object. It is a severe trauma to a highly vascularized cellular organ. Blood vessels rupture, cells die, and the neighboring soft tissues may be bruised or disrupted. To fix this, the body launches a beautifully orchestrated rescue mission. The immediate response is the formation of a fracture hematoma, a blood clot that plugs the gap and establishes the initial healing environment. Packed with inflammatory markers, proteins, and blood cells, this clot acts as a temporary biological glue and a beacon for repair crews. Just like with a skin wound, this clotting phase is merely the opening stabilizing act. Next, inflammation takes over. Immune cells swarm the area to sweep away cellular debris and dead tissue, while local blood vessels become highly active and chemical messengers call in the rebuilding crews. The resulting pain, swelling, and tenderness are not signs that the body has forgotten how to function, but rather clear indicators that the repair site is being actively organized. Following this cleanup, a soft callus emerges. Unlike the thickened skin on your hand or foot, this callus is a flexible bridge of cartilage-like material and collagen that spans the broken ends. It holds the pieces together, though it lacks the rigidity for full strength. Gradually, osteoblasts invade this soft bridge, laying down fresh, mineralized tissue to form a hard callus. At this point, the break is highly stable, but the new bone is often thick and somewhat disorganized because the body prioritizes sheer strength and continuity. It is much like throwing together a rugged, temporary bridge just to get things moving before worrying about making it elegant. The grand finale is long-term remodeling. Over months or even years, osteoclasts chew away the clumsy, excess bone while osteoblasts lay down highly organized, structurally sound tissue, eventually restoring the bone's original contour. The timeline depends heavily on the fracture type, age, overall health, blood supply, and physical forces. Because it can regenerate actual, mineralized architecture, bone often achieves a more complete recovery than many soft tissues. A well-aligned break with a robust blood supply can regain truly impressive strength and shape. However, a perfect recovery is never automatic. Proper alignment is critical. If the fragments sit at a poor angle, the healed bone will function poorly. A rich blood supply is mandatory to feed the repair cells, and youth is an advantage since the healing engine naturally slows down later in life. Diet plays a massive role, demanding plenty of protein, calcium, vitamin D, and other building blocks. Physical movement is equally tricky to balance. The fracture needs enough stability to knit together, yet the bone also requires gentle mechanical loading to signal that it needs to stay strong. Moving too much too soon will disrupt the delicate new tissue, while keeping it completely immobilized for too long will weaken the bone. If you have ever had a limb in a cast, you know that it feels noticeably thinner and weaker afterward. Both muscle and bone respond directly to use. The body is incredibly pragmatic and refuses to waste energy maintaining expensive structure without a reason, making its maintenance budget highly efficient. If occasionally a bit ruthless, this incredible adaptability is perfectly captured by Wolff's law, named after Julius Wolff, a 19th century German surgeon who pioneered the study of mechanical stress in orthopedics. This principle dictates that bone architecture adapts directly to the physical demands placed upon it. Consistent, stronger loading prompts the skeleton to build denser structures, whereas reduced loading leads to bone loss. This is precisely why weight-bearing exercises like walking and resistance training are fantastic for skeletal health. They send a clear message to your cells that the current framework is necessary. Conversely, it explains why astronauts suffer from bone density loss in the microgravity of space. Their bones remain alive and remodeling, but the mechanical signals have simply changed. Of course, Wolff's law doesn't mean all stress is beneficial. Your skeleton requires appropriate loading, recovery, proper nutrition, and healthy hormonal signaling. Taking a gentle walk or doing a sensible strengthening routine is vastly different from repeatedly asking a tired bone to do something unreasonable until it files a formal complaint in the form of a stress fracture. Still, the broader principle is beautiful. Your skeleton is constantly listening, permanently recording the physical forces of a life within its very structure. The serving arm of a tennis player, the legs of a runner, the feet of a dancer, a casted wrist, and a healing fracture all prove that this is a highly responsive tissue molded by use and protected by repair. Far from being a simple, stony framework, it is living stone. If stone could bleed, feel pain, manufacture blood cells, rebuild itself, and quietly judge your posture from the inside, it would be bone. It breaks clots, inflames, bridges, hardens, and remodels, achieving a level of restoration many tissues cannot match, but only through the careful coordination of cells, blood supply, minerals, collagen, mechanical signals, and time. And that exact same philosophy of repair through use, strain, rest, and rebuilding appears in another highly familiar part of the body, one where the damage is often microscopic. Stepping right into that microscopic world, we find that feeling sore is incredibly common, and the resulting adaptations actually leave your tissues stronger than before. Fixing muscle isn't just a reaction to an obvious injury. It is a continuous process triggered by everyday activities. Whether you are taking a lengthy stroll, trying a new gym routine, hauling heavy groceries, walking upstairs, hoisting luggage, or spending an afternoon tackling a bizarre household chore, that somehow activates muscles you forgot you owned. Your body is responding. Skeletal muscle is fundamentally engineered for motion, force, and adjustment. Each time you push it, you feed it data about future needs. These muscles consist of elongated fibers that shorten to create motion, bundled alongside nerves, blood vessels, and connective tissue. When you push these muscles hard, particularly with new or intense exercises, microscopic damage happens within those fibers and their surrounding web. People often call these micro tears, a phrase that makes the process sound more dramatic than it is. Usually, this isn't severe harm. It is simply the standard cycle of strain, repair, and adaptation. To handle this disruption, your body kicks off a careful recovery sequence. It dispatches chemical signals, boosts local circulation, and sends immune cells to sweep away debris. Meanwhile, muscle cells start manufacturing fresh proteins and support cells become more active. Crucially, the tissue doesn't always just bounce back to its baseline. If you apply that physical challenge sensibly, the muscle upgrades itself to handle similar workloads easier next time. This is muscle hypertrophy, meaning an increase in fiber size. It is the primary way skeletal muscle adjusts to repeated loading, especially resistance training. This growth is driven by mechanical tension, repair signaling, nutrition, hormones, and consistent practice. The muscle senses the demand for force and builds the internal machinery required. However, this isn't instantaneous. One workout won't magically chisel your physique overnight, no matter what deceptive fitness adverts whisper to vulnerable people. True adaptation requires repeated signals and adequate recovery. Your system demands the physical stimulus, plus the materials and time to respond. At the heart of this is protein synthesis, the cellular process of assembling new proteins. Muscle fibers contain contractile proteins like actin and myosin, alongside structural and regulatory proteins. Following exercise or injury, the balance between protein breakdown and creation becomes critical. With sufficient nutrients, rest, and signaling, your body mends broken proteins and builds new ones. Blood flow matters immensely here. Muscles need oxygen and nourishment to function and heal. Your bloodstream delivers amino acids, glucose, fatty acids, hormones, and immune cells while hauling away waste. Circulation shifts during and after activity to supply working muscles, which is why movement makes you feel warm. The tissue isn't just doing mechanical work, it is chemically busy. Among the most crucial repair players are satellite cells. These muscle-associated adult stem cells rest quietly near the fibers. When strain or injury causes damage, satellite cells activate. They multiply, and some descendants fuse directly into existing muscle fibers, donating extra nuclei to support growth. This is vital because skeletal muscle fibers are massive cells with multiple nuclei, and a single nucleus can only manage a limited region. Adding nuclei helps the fiber handle adaptation demands. They aren't magic cells, but vital helpers waiting beside the tissue. Recovery is also linked to inflammation, which isn't automatically bad. Post-exercise, local inflammation coordinates repair. Immune cells clear wreckage and release rebuilding signals. The goal isn't to erase inflammation, but to allow the right amount at the right time before it settles. Like a good maintenance crew, it is useful when it arrives, does its job, and leaves before becoming annoying. Delayed onset muscle soreness is a familiar result of this process. It flares up after unfamiliar or intense exercise, especially movements that lengthen a muscle under tension, like walking downhill. Lowering a weight or discovering squats are a personal betrayal. The soreness develops hours later, peaking a day or two after. It is tied to microscopic disruption, inflammation, chemical sensitivity, and adaptation. It is not simply lactic acid sitting in the muscle. That older explanation is too simple. Lactate is produced during hard effort but cleared quickly and used as fuel. The lingering soreness is the repair response to unfamiliar stress. Rest is essential because healing takes time. During recovery, muscle rebuilds proteins, restores energy, adjusts cellular machinery, and resolves inflammation. Sleep, nutrition, hydration, and sensible spacing between efforts help. Without recovery, strain outpaces repair. With too much rest, muscle shrinks and weakens. The body listens to your demands and sometimes takes silence as a budget cut. Gradual loading is a vital principle in adaptation. Muscle needs enough challenge to stimulate change, but not enough to overwhelm repair. This is why training programs increase difficulty slowly. Muscle adapts best when the signal is repeated, manageable, and followed by recovery. Repair isn't just fixing damage, it is preparation for the next demand. Exercise physiology researchers, including Roger Fielding and others studying aging and adaptation, have clarified how muscle responds to resistance training, nutrition, inactivity, and time. This research is crucial because muscle mass and strength decline with age, a process called sarcopenia. Resistance exercise and adequate protein support muscle function, though individual needs vary. The broader lesson is that muscle is responsive tissue. It changes with use, disuse, injury, recovery, age, hormones, nutrition, and blood supply. It is not merely ropes pulling on bones. It is a living system that senses load, repairs microscopic disruption, and adapts. This makes muscle repair different from healing a cut, but not entirely separate. There are still signals, immune cells, proteins, blood vessels, stem-like cells, and remodeling. The scale and purpose differ, but the theme remains. The body always tries to preserve function. After effort, muscle doesn't just complain, though it does that convincingly. It rebuilds, replaces proteins, adjusts structure, and prepares for what is next. Yet, not all movement tissues heal this easily. Some are strong precisely because they are dense and tough, but that toughness means slower repair. The tendons and ligaments connecting movement show another side of healing, where strength, blood supply, collagen, and patience become especially important. Building on that foundation, we must examine how these connective tissues actually operate. Designed primarily for durability, ligaments and tendons rarely demand your attention. Instead, they function silently behind the scenes to transfer physical force, guide motions, stabilize joints, and synchronize the actions of bones and muscles. Every time you take a step, reach for an object, jump, turn your neck, or enjoy a morning stretch, you rely on these unassuming structures to perform flawlessly. Tendons specifically link muscle directly to bone. As a muscle flexes, the tendon transfers that contraction energy into the skeletal frame to create motion. The Achilles tendon, for instance, anchors calf muscles to the heel, enabling you to walk, run, and push off the ground. Ligaments, however, bridge bone to bone. By keeping skeletal structure properly aligned while permitting controlled mobility, they act as joint stabilizers. You find these vital restraint and guidance systems throughout the ankles, knees, shoulders, wrists, and spine. The secret to their durability lies in their high collagen content. These fibers provide exceptional tensile strength, making the tissues highly resistant to pulling forces. Inside a healthy tendon, collagen fibers are meticulously organized, pointing exactly in the direction of the physical stress they normally endure. This precise alignment is why tendons handle massive muscular forces without ripping during everyday activities. Ligaments depend on this same collagen, although their fiber patterns shift based on the unique joint they support and the multi-directional forces they withstand. However, the traits granting tendons and ligaments immense toughness also make them notoriously slow to recover. Unlike highly vascularized tissues like skin or muscle, many connective structures receive relatively poor blood flow. Since the bloodstream delivers essential repair materials, signaling molecules, immune cells, nutrients, and oxygen, restricted circulation naturally slows the healing timeline. With fewer resources arriving and metabolic waste clearing sluggishly, recovery takes much longer. This does not mean these tissues cannot heal. Rather, their recovery demands immense patience, progressive remodeling, and a biological timeline that ignores our desire for a quick fix. Consider a common ankle sprain, occurring when a joint twists unnaturally and overstretches or tears a ligament. The area typically becomes painful, swollen, and unstable. The body immediately responds with microvessel clotting, inflammation, immune activity, and eventually new collagen creation. Yet, restoring the ligament's original coordination and strength is lengthy, as the tissue must reconstruct both physical continuity and intricate internal organization. Achilles tendon issues highlight a different recovery facet. Because this tendon absorbs massive impacts during climbing, jumping, running, and walking, it is susceptible to degeneration from sudden strains, repetitive overloading, inadequate recovery, or aging. Often, these troubles are not straightforward, clean rips. Instead, they involve internal swelling, disrupted cellular activity, chaotic collagen patterns, and matrix alterations. We also see frequent rotator cuff injuries. This collection of tendons and muscles stabilizes the shoulder. Due to long-term wear, trauma, repetitive overhead motions, or aging, these tendons suffer partial tears, complete ruptures, or severe irritation. Because the shoulder boasts massive mobility, and certain rotator cuff parts suffer restricted blood flow, healing is often sluggish and occasionally incomplete. A crucial recovery concept is collagen realignment. As healing kicks off, fibroblasts and other cells manufacture fresh collagen. Initially, this material is deposited in a chaotic mesh. While it bridges the tissue gap, it lacks the elegant parallel structure of a pristine tendon or meticulously arranged ligament fibers. Over time, mechanical cues direct the remodeling phase. Fibers gradually align with physical stress direction, making the tissue more functional and robust. This explains why controlled movement often yields superior healing compared to total inactivity. The term controlled is vital. Excessive force prematurely redamages fragile tissue. Conversely, avoiding all loading is equally detrimental, because ligaments and tendons require mechanical tension to remodel correctly. They are engineered to react to stress. Gentle, progressive loads encourage collagen to organize along functional lines, actively restoring strength. Naturally, this does not imply aggressively mobilizing every injury. Unstable joints, surgical repairs, fractures, and severe tears require strict protection. Optimal movement depends on medical advice, the healing stage, injury nature, and specific tissue. Broadly, connective tissue is far from passive string. It is dynamic, living material that adapts to physical loads. Scientist Keith Barr has made significant contributions to tendon biology and connective tissue adaptation. His research explores how collagen synthesis is impacted by recovery and activity, and how ligaments and tendons react to mechanical stress. This inquiry bridges practical rehabilitation and cellular biology. Ultimately, tissues require time, rest, nutrients, and physical signals. You cannot simply wish strength back. It must be physically remodeled through carefully managed, repetitive demands. While scar tissue bridges a torn ligament or tendon, it rarely restores flawless movement. New tissue is frequently less elastic, stiffer, and less organized. A healed ligament might keep a joint intact, yet leave lingering instability. A recovered tendon might regain raw strength but remain thick, sensitive, or poor at gliding. The body reinforces damaged areas but rarely replicates the exact pre-injury microscopic architecture. This is why bouncing back from connective tissue injuries is so frustrating. Pain might vanish before tissue recovers full strength. Swelling might disappear while internal remodeling continues. You might feel normal, only to realize your ligament is unprepared for heavy lifting, sprinting, sudden twisting, or heroic weekend gardening. Connective tissue operates on its own strict calendar, ignoring personal convenience. Nevertheless, its repair is awe-inspiring. Ligaments and tendons are highly specialized, dense, and strong. Healing them demands long-term remodeling, gradual loading, mechanical signaling, adequate blood flow, controlled inflammation, and massive collagen production. The body rebuilds not just material, but directional orientation. Strength relies on structure, dictated by fiber arrangement. This adds fascinating complexity to human recovery. The same body that rapidly heals skin, powerfully remodels bone, and quickly adapts muscle takes significantly longer to fix a tendon or ligament. Healing is never uniform. It shifts based on cellular environment, blood supply, biological function, and structural makeup. A tendon is not a muscle, a ligament is not skin, bone is not a scab. Every tissue repairs strictly according to its unique nature and physical duties. Building on that specialized repair work, there is another dynamic network constantly patrolling the body. This system cleans, defends, communicates, and ultimately dictates whether a healing site settles down peacefully or stays stuck in an inflamed state. We often picture the immune system purely as a military defense force. While that analogy holds true, it absolutely shields us from viruses, bacteria, parasites, and fungi by recognizing threats, launching attacks, and remembering past invasions to keep microscopic squatters from moving in rent-free. That is only half the story. The immune system is equally a cleanup crew, a messaging grid, and a master regulator of recovery. It is deeply embedded in every single phase of healing, from the initial crisis to the gradual restoration of strength. When an injury occurs, immune cells dictate the next moves. They eliminate pathogens, sweep away dead cellular debris, dispatch chemical messengers, direct blood vessel behavior, steer fibroblasts, modulate inflammation, and guide the wounded zone back to equilibrium. Without this network, we would not just face a higher risk of infection, our bodies would completely lose the ability to coordinate tissue repair. This vast network operates through two main branches: innate immunity and adaptive immunity. Let us start with innate immunity, the rapid, generalized first responder. Because it does not need to study a specific threat beforehand, it is perpetually primed for action. This branch encompasses physical shields like mucous membranes and skin, which block countless microbes before they ever breach the interior. It also drives inflammation, a highly orchestrated reaction that rushes signaling molecules, immune troops, and extra blood flow to the compromised area. Neutrophils are key players here. They sprint to the injury site, gobble up pathogens, and unleash destructive compounds to neutralize the enemy. They are incredibly effective and swift, even if their methods lack a gentle touch. Macrophages also belong to this innate front line. These cellular pac-men devour debris, dead cells, and microbes. Beyond just eating trash, they broadcast signals that determine whether a tissue stays inflamed or pivots toward reconstruction. Acting simultaneously as a security guard, janitor, messenger, and project manager is a massive workload for a cell that does not even own a calendar. Dendritic cells serve as vital intelligence gatherers. They harvest data from the injury zone and display fragments of damaged tissue or pathogens to the adaptive immune cells, effectively bridging the gap between the rapid innate reaction and the slower, highly targeted adaptive response. Then we have natural killer cells, which specialize in identifying and eliminating abnormal or infected cells that display internal distress signals. Rounding out this innate arsenal is the complement system. This collection of proteins circulating in tissue fluids and blood tags pathogens for elimination, summons additional immune cells, and can literally punch holes in the outer membranes of microbes. Described out loud, it sounds like a medieval siege tactic, but it is a completely standard biological defense mechanism. The second branch, adaptive immunity, trades speed for extreme precision. It takes a bit longer to mobilize during an initial exposure, but its targeting is spectacularly accurate. B cells manufacture antibodies, specialized proteins that latch onto exact sections of toxins or microbes. These antibodies neutralize threats, flag them for demolition, and assist other immune cells in identifying what needs removing. Meanwhile, T cells take on diverse assignments. Some orchestrate the broader immune strategy, while others directly assassinate compromised cells. The true superpower of adaptive immunity, however, is its memory. Following a vaccination or an infection, the body mounts a vastly superior and faster counterattack if that exact same pathogen ever returns. This capacity to learn, adapt, and refine its tactics over time is a monumental evolutionary advantage. During tissue repair, adaptive immunity is incredibly beneficial, yet it requires strict oversight. A robust immune strike is perfect for clearing out abnormal cells, fighting viral invasions, or sanitizing a bacteria-laced wound. However, we are dealing with potent chemistry executed by living cells, and you cannot leave that kind of firepower completely unmonitored. The body has to tightly control these responses, because an overzealous defense can easily wreck the very tissues it swore to protect. For instance, neutrophils might leak reactive molecules and enzymes that damage neighboring healthy cells. Inflammation can trigger tissue stress, pain, and swelling. Even highly efficient antibodies and T cells can turn destructive if they lock onto the wrong targets. The immune system must spot genuine threats without treating every innocent bystander cell as a suspect. This crucial ability to ignore the body's own healthy structures is known as immune tolerance. It is a foundational concept in immunology, enabling the body to strike at harmful invaders while giving native tissues a free pass. Modern researchers like Peter Medawar and Frank McFarlane Burnett were instrumental in shaping our understanding of this self versus non-self distinction, explaining exactly how the immune system acquires tolerance and why it is so vital. When this tolerance breaks down, autoimmunity takes over. The immune system mistakenly bombards the body's own organs. In type 1 diabetes, it destroys the pancreas's insulin-producing cells. In rheumatoid arthritis, it fuels severe joint inflammation. In multiple sclerosis, it strips away myelin, the protective insulation surrounding central nervous system nerve fibers. Though these diseases look very different on the surface, they all illustrate the same core tragedy: a tolerant system turning its defensive power into self-inflicted damage. Consequently, successful healing relies just as much on deactivating the immune system as it does on turning it on. A fresh wound absolutely requires immune cells to sweep away dead matter and block infections. Yet, if that inflammatory phase drags on, the entire healing process hits a wall. Chronic inflammation traps cells in a perpetual state of chemical panic, promotes heavy scarring, and blocks actual tissue reconstruction. A healing site demands protection, but it equally demands peace. In a perfectly functioning recovery, the immune system evolves as time passes. The initial phase is highly aggressive, prioritizing debris clearance, microbe destruction, damage recognition, and wound sealing. As days pass, the chemical chatter shifts gears. Macrophages sweep up the spent neutrophils. Pro-inflammatory chemicals fade away, while pro-repair signals surge. Fibroblasts start spinning extracellular matrix, new blood vessels sprout, and local tissue cells get to work rebuilding the zone. The immune system never actually clocks out. it simply changes its job description. This seamless transition proves just how intimately immunity is tied to recovery. It is not some isolated security department waiting in the lobby for an infection alarm. It is on the ground the second an injury happens, dictating whether inflammation resolves nicely or turns chronic, influencing scar formation and curating the exact environment where epithelial cells, blood vessels, fibroblasts, and stem cells operate. Ultimately, the immune system is far more than a biological army. It is a comprehensive restoration service. It hauls away broken pieces, scans for hazards, issues building instructions, directs the reconstruction, and carefully restores harmony without causing excessive collateral damage. When this intricate dance goes perfectly, the entire miracle goes completely unnoticed. A cut seals shut, a bruise fades away, a scratchy throat clears up, a pulled muscle relaxes, and the body quietly slips back into the rhythm of everyday life. But long before the body slips back into that everyday rhythm, a massive amount of work is already happening on a microscopic level. Far below the surface of fading bruises and healing cuts, individual cells are constantly detecting and fixing internal damage. Every single visible recovery you experience relies entirely on invisible intracellular maintenance. Far from being simple little bags of fluid, these microscopic living units are incredibly complex. They house intricate networks of signaling pathways, waste processing machinery, energy generators, genetic blueprints, specialized organelles, functional proteins, and protective membranes. The real challenge of being alive is that a cell cannot simply pause its daily operations to focus on maintenance. There are no closed shutters or afternoon breaks for cellular repair. Instead, a cell must juggle its normal duties, managing energy, transporting materials, responding to external signals, and manufacturing proteins, while simultaneously fixing internal wear and tear. It operates as a bustling, microscopic working world that must decide in real time whether to correct a flaw, manage its resources, protect its genetic code, or safely self-destruct. Protecting DNA is arguably the cell's most critical maintenance task, as these molecules hold the master instructions for all cellular functions and protein creation. Because DNA is constantly being read, copied during cell division, and kept in a highly active chemical environment, it naturally suffers wear and tear. In fact, genetic damage is a completely normal part of existence, rather than a rare anomaly. Mistakes occasionally happen during replication when a cell copies its genome, slipping an incorrect chemical letter into the new sequence. Furthermore, everyday metabolic processes generate reactive oxygen species that can harm the genetic code. Add in environmental radiation, harsh chemicals, and ultraviolet sunlight, and the DNA faces a continuous barrage of threats. Fortunately, our cells are not defenseless libraries with leaky roofs. They possess an impressive arsenal of repair mechanisms designed to catch and fix errors before they escalate into serious problems. For minor chemical alterations to single DNA bases, the cell relies on basic bases excision repair. Specialized enzymes spot the flaw, snip out the damaged section, and insert the correct piece, much like carefully erasing a smudged word in a massive instruction manual instead of tossing the whole book. When the DNA structure suffers bulkier distortions, such as those caused by UV rays, nucleotide excision repair takes over. This process cuts out an entire short segment of the damaged strand and uses the healthy opposite strand as a template to fill the gap. Meanwhile, mismatch repair acts as a proofreader for replication errors, catching incorrectly paired bases to ensure dividing cells pass down flawless genetic instructions. Without this, errors would pile up rapidly. For the most severe threats, like double-strand breaks where both sides of the DNA molecule are completely severed, the cell has specialized protocols. It might use a matching template for highly accurate reconstruction, or it might quickly fuse the broken ends together. A faster but slightly less precise method, chosen based on the cell type, timing, and available information. The brilliant mechanics of these genetic fix-it systems were brought to light by researchers like Paul Modric, Thomas Lindahl, and Aziz Sankar. Their groundbreaking discoveries proved that our genetic stability doesn't come from DNA being perfectly shielded. Rather, it survives because living cells actively patrol, inspect, and correct their own blueprints amidst constant chemical chaos and copying errors. Yet, genetic code is just one piece of the puzzle. Proteins demand just as much quality control. As the cellular workforce, proteins build structures, accelerate chemical reactions, carry signals, and transport materials, but they only function if folded into exact, complex shapes. Normal cellular activity, aging, genetic hiccups, chemical stress, and heat can all cause these vital molecules to misfold. To prevent this, chaperone proteins step in. True to their wonderfully fitting name, they don't do the actual final job, but they guide other proteins into the correct shapes, saving them from embarrassing structural blunders. When a protein is damaged beyond saving, the cell dismantles it using the ubiquitin proteasome system. A tiny protein tag called ubiquitin is attached to the defective molecule, marking it for the proteasome, a molecular machine that breaks it down into reusable smaller pieces. It is essentially strict, high-quality cellular recycling. Additionally, cells employ autophagy, which translates to self-eating. While it sounds alarming, it is simply a process where the cell wraps up old organelles and damaged clutter into compartments, sending them to lysosomes to be broken down. This internal cleanup crew helps recycle building blocks and becomes especially vital during times of nutrient shortage or severe stress. The cell's internal organs, or organelles, also require dedicated upkeep. Damaged mitochondria, the cell's energy-producing power plants, are cleared out through a specific type of autophagy known as mitophagy. Cellular membranes undergo constant patching when disrupted, and the endoplasmic reticulum, the hub for protein folding and processing, triggers specialized stress responses to restore balance if too many unfolded proteins start piling up. Ultimately, intracellular repair isn't a single mechanism, but a vast collection of monitoring, fixing, recycling, and removal protocols. The cell is always weighing a practical question: can this be saved? Should it be recycled? Or is the damage too severe? Sometimes the safest choice is total self-removal through apoptosis, or programmed cell death. Far from a messy collapse, apoptosis is a highly controlled dismantling. The cell neatly packages its internal components to limit inflammation, allowing immune cells or neighbors to easily sweep away the remains. This self-sacrifice protects the wider body from infected, severely damaged, unneeded, or potentially dangerous cells. It is essential for immune regulation, tissue maintenance, and development. It is also crucial for cancer prevention, because a cell with severe DNA damage is much safer dead than alive and dividing. While it might seem harsh, sacrificing one compromised unit at the cellular scale ensures the stability of the entire tissue. There is a quietly profound beauty in this reality. The body heals not just by building new material, but by deciding what cannot safely remain. A cell might edit a strand of DNA, refold or destroy a protein, repair or recycle a mitochondrion, or gracefully remove itself entirely. Repair is not always about pure restoration. Sometimes it is careful editing. Across every tissue in your body, these microscopic choices never stop. Skin cells patch up DNA fried by sunlight. Immune cells recycle damaged components after a battle. Muscle cells rebuild proteins after physical strain. Intestinal cells maintain themselves in a harsh chemical environment. And bone cells respond to physical stress and signaling. Every single visible act of healing depends entirely on these countless, invisible acts of cellular maintenance, and all of that microscopic maintenance comes with a price. None of this circuit. To get the job done, your body demands a massive supply of energy, oxygen, nutrients, enzymes, and time. Cells simply cannot reconstruct tissue without the right fuel and the biological machinery to convert it into usable power. From the outside, recovering from an injury might look like a quiet, peaceful process. But beneath that quiet surface, there is a deep energetic cost being paid constantly by the living chemistry inside every single cell. Whether it is a cut sealing up, a fractured bone rebuilding, a torn muscle recovering, or a single cell fixing its DNA, healing is incredibly expensive work. The body cannot repair itself through good intentions alone, though that would certainly be convenient and probably very popular. Instead, cells must physically move, divide, synthesize proteins, manufacture collagen, pump ions across membranes, transmit chemical messages, regulate temperature, and manage blood flow. And they have to do all of this while simultaneously keeping ordinary life running at the exact same time. Healing does not pause normal biology. It is just normal biology taking on extra tasks. When skin starts sealing a cut, keratinocytes require energy to crawl across the surface. Fibroblasts need energy to make collagen and other extracellular matrix materials. Immune cells need power to move, swallow debris, and broadcast signals. Blood vessel cells demand energy to sprout new capillaries, while bone cells need it to construct and mineralize fresh tissue. Even inflammation, which you might dismiss as simple redness and swelling, is a highly active metabolic state demanding fuel, oxygen, proteins, and constant communication. The main usable energy currency of the cell is adenosine triphosphate, which we will refer to by its familiar acronym ATP. ATP is not some vague, glowing orb of energy. It is a physical molecule that cells use to transfer power into practical work, like building, moving, transporting, signaling, and repairing. The bulk of this ATP is manufactured inside mitochondria. They are organelles inside cells, often described as powerhouses, though they are more like controlled energy conversion systems than tiny generators wearing hard hats. They extract usable power from carbohydrates and fats, utilizing oxygen through a beautifully organized sequence of reactions. One of the main processes involved in this is oxidative phosphorylation. While the phrase sounds heavy, the basic idea can be kept gentle. Cells break down fuel molecules from food into smaller chemical forms. Electrons from those molecules are passed down a protein chain in the inner mitochondrial membrane. As this happens, the mitochondrion creates a difference in charged particles across that membrane, which the cell harnesses to produce ATP. Simply put, mitochondria combine oxygen and fuel to release energy in a controlled manner. This control is vital. A cell cannot just incinerate fuel all at once like a campfire, which rapidly blasts out heat and light. It needs to capture energy safely and gradually, powering life without setting the internal furniture on fire. Oxygen is therefore absolutely essential for many repair processes. Tissues need a steady supply of oxygen to make enough ATP for rebuilding. This is why a robust blood supply is so critical. Well-supplied tissues get a steady delivery of oxygen, nutrients, immune cells, and repair materials. Poorly supplied areas heal much slower. Tendons, ligaments, and some cartilage struggle to recover due to limited circulation. Skin, muscle, and bone often have much better access to blood, though even there, healing depends heavily on the quality of circulation. However, relying on oxygen introduces a tricky complication. During standard metabolism, cells generate reactive oxygen species. These are chemically reactive molecules that contain oxygen. At low or controlled levels, reactive oxygen species can actually help with signaling. guiding inflammation, blood vessel behavior, and stress responses. They are not automatic villains. The trouble starts when these reactive molecules are produced in excess or not properly controlled. Then they damage proteins, lipids, DNA, and other cellular structures, a process called oxidative stress. This is why the body needs antioxidant systems, DNA repair pathways, protein quality control, and careful metabolic balance. Oxygen powers repair, but its chemistry also creates damage that repair systems must manage. Biology often has this slightly ironic habit of making the solution part of the problem. To solve the problem of a broken body, biology demands even more resources. This brings us to nutrition, because fixing yourself requires both raw building materials and a massive amount of energy. Think of protein as the ultimate supply chain, delivering amino acids that serve as the fundamental bricks for tissue proteins, structural components, immune molecules, and enzymes. Take collagen, for instance. This crucial protein relies entirely on a consistent delivery of those amino acids. But the assembly line also needs a catalyst, which is where vitamin C enters the picture. This nutrient is absolutely vital for synthesizing collagen, as it assists the enzymes that modify the protein so the fibers can assemble correctly. We actually have the Hungarian biochemist Albert Szent-Györgyi to thank for a huge chunk of our understanding here, given his major contributions to identifying and researching this essential vitamin. When you completely run out of vitamin C, the result is scurvy. In this severe condition, collagen production crashes, resulting in fragile connective tissues, bleeding gums, and wounds that simply refuse to heal properly. While scurvy is an extreme scenario, it perfectly illustrates just how deeply biological repair is rooted in basic chemistry. Moving to the skeleton, calcium and vitamin D are the dynamic duo of bone health. Calcium acts as the primary mineral building block of your bones, while vitamin D steps in to manage how that calcium is absorbed and metabolized. Then there is iron, which is absolutely essential for creating hemoglobin. Since hemoglobin is the protein that carries oxygen inside your red blood cells, iron directly ensures that your healing tissues actually get the oxygen they need. Zinc is another heavy hitter, juggling multiple responsibilities like DNA synthesis, enzyme activation, immune support, and overall wound healing. It is crucial to remember that none of these nutrients operate in isolation, and you cannot just treat them like some magical repair dust. Instead, they act as a collective reminder that physical healing demands physical materials. When you face a massive physical challenge like a severe infection, major surgery, serious illness, burns, or a traumatic injury, your body has to perform a complex resource juggling act. Suddenly, your need for protein and calories skyrockets. Your immune system kicks into high gear, tissue reconstruction accelerates, and your core temperature might spike if a fever develops. To keep up, your metabolism shifts, and your body starts breaking down its energy reserves just to survive and rebuild. For minor, everyday scrapes and bruises, this metabolic shift is far less intense, but the underlying rule stays exactly the same. Healing always comes with a price tag. Just keeping your baseline functions running is expensive. Maintaining a stable body temperature burns calories. So does pumping blood, breathing air, filtering waste through the kidneys, and sending electrical signals through your nerves. Healing has to be funded on top of all those baseline expenses. Furthermore, your body never gets a completely free schedule to focus solely on fixing a wound. It constantly has to squeeze recovery into a daily itinerary already packed with digesting food, moving around, thinking thoughts, breathing, and occasionally walking into a room only to immediately forget why you went in there. Because of this, recovery is essentially a continuous biological negotiation. At the microscopic level, your cells are demanding a constant stream of oxygen, energy and physical building blocks. They require proper blood circulation, precise chemical messaging, and an inflammatory response that both kicks off the process and eventually shuts down. They need old, damaged debris hauled away and fresh structures erected. They rely on their mitochondria to keep churning out ATP for fuel, while simultaneously needing mechanisms to handle the oxidative stress that all this activity creates. None of this is free. Yet, as long as the environment is reasonably supportive, your body happily pays this biological bill without you even noticing. One of the absolute best ways to create that supportive environment is simply to rest. This is not because your body powers down when you stop moving, but rather because resting gives your internal repair crews the space they need to operate efficiently. Sleep in particular is far from a blank, empty void. It is a profoundly active biological rhythm that manages memory consolidation, metabolic balance, hormone regulation, immune function, and the silent upkeep of your entire physical form. From an outside perspective, a sleeping person looks completely disconnected. Their eyes are shut, their muscles go limp, their breathing slows to a gentle cadence, and the room falls silent. It looks as though the person has simply faded away from reality for the night, making sleep seem like a total absence of activity. But that is an illusion. Sleep is a highly active biological condition. It actively maintains metabolic equilibrium, processes memories, repairs tissues, balances hormones, and supports immune defenses while quietly maintaining the nervous system. Your body is not just flipping an off switch. It is completely rearranging its operational priorities. Certain systems dial back their activity, while others ramp up significantly. Your brain alters its electrical wave patterns, hormone levels fluctuate, immune messaging changes gears, and energy consumption is recalibrated. A sleeping body is incredibly busy doing the exact type of internal labor that is nearly impossible to perform while you are awake and moving around. This intense behind-the-scenes work is exactly why recovery and sleep are so deeply intertwined. When you hit the deep stages of sleep, your body starts releasing growth hormone in rhythmic pulses. This specific hormone is a key player in bone metabolism, muscle recovery, general tissue upkeep, and managing how your body processes proteins, sugars, and fats. It is slightly disappointing to realize it is not some magical, instant healing elixir, but scientifically speaking, it is a vital component of a massive network of signals that orchestrate restoration and growth. Deep sleep is the ultimate physical recovery phase. Your breathing and heart rate drop, allowing your body to settle into an optimal state for reconstruction. Strained muscles require cellular repair, enhanced blood flow, and protein synthesis. Bones need continuous remodeling. Connective tissues and skin demand immune coordination and fresh collagen. Sleep does not magically do all this by itself, but it establishes the perfect biological backdrop for these tasks to happen smoothly. Your immune system is also heavily influenced by your sleep habits. Getting enough rest helps balance inflammatory signals, maintaining the delicate line between aggressive defense and peaceful calm. This is why you feel so incredibly sleepy after getting sick or injured. That overwhelming urge to nap is not you just being lazy. It is a highly coordinated biological strategy. By forcing you to rest, your body redirects precious energy toward managing fevers, driving immune responses, and repairing damaged tissues. If you skimp on sleep, this delicate balance falls apart. When your rest is fragmented, too short, or constantly interrupted, your immune regulation gets sloppy. Inflammatory markers can spike, your ability to fight off infections drops, and tissue repair slows down. This is especially true if bad sleep is mixed with poor diet, chronic stress, or underlying health issues. Your body is remarkably stubborn and will still try to heal under terrible conditions. but it will be fighting an uphill battle with a severe disadvantage. Metabolic health is another area heavily dictated by sleep. While you slumber, your body carefully manages energy balance, stress hormones, appetite signals, and glucose processing. If you mess up your sleep schedule, you can seriously disrupt your appetite regulation and insulin sensitivity. This is a big deal for healing because recovery requires a highly organized internal chemistry and a steady supply of cellular fuel. The brain also runs its own specialized night shift. One of the most fascinating discoveries here is the glymphatic system, a waste clearance network that kicks into high gear while you sleep. Thanks to the research of Mike and Nedegard and her team, we now know that fluid shifts within the brain help flush out metabolic garbage. Since the brain is an incredibly busy organ, it generates a ton of cellular trash. The changes in fluid dynamics and brain activity during sleep facilitate this crucial cleanup. We should not oversimplify the glymphatic system as just a nightly brainwash, as if your skull houses a tiny, strictly scheduled dishwasher. However, it perfectly highlights how sleep drives physical maintenance. Your sleeping brain is not just resting or dreaming, it is actively sorting, regulating, clearing out junk, and prepping itself for the next day. This nighttime sorting also applies to memory processing. Your daily experiences are not just tossed into a mental filing cabinet. Instead, your brain actively weakens certain neural connections, strengthens others, integrates fresh data, and completely restructures your memory networks. In a broader sense, this is absolutely a form of repair. A living organism must maintain its functional abilities just as much as its physical tissues. For the brain, this means preserving emotional regulation, learning capacity, memory, and the basic ability to wake up and understand the world around you. All of this is governed by the circadian rhythm, your body's internal 24-hour clock. This timing system coordinates digestion, metabolism, body temperature, hormone release, and the sleep-wake cycle. The master conductor of this system is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a tiny cluster of cells in the hypothalamus. It takes in light data from your eyes to sync your internal biology with the external environment. Light is the ultimate cue for this clock. Bright morning light sets the daily pace, while evening darkness triggers the release of melatonin, the hormone that signals it is time to sleep. Beyond the brain, individual tissues like fat, immune cells, muscles, and the liver run their own local clocks. The master clock in the brain acts like a conductor, ensuring this massive biological orchestra does not end up playing a dozen different songs at the exact same time. This internal timing is deeply relevant to physical repair. Metabolism, body temperature, hormone release, and immune activity all fluctuate depending on the time of day. A recovering muscle, a healing wound, or an active immune system does not exist in a time vacuum. Your biological rhythms dictate exactly when specific repair processes peak and how effectively different bodily systems collaborate. Of course, we should not view sleep as an absolute miracle worker. Crawling into bed will not instantly reverse aging, magically rebuild shattered cartilage, erase all inflammation, instantly fuse a broken bone, or politely convince a virus to pack its bags. True healing still relies on your age, the specific tissue damaged, your nutritional status, blood supply, overall health, and proper medical intervention. What sleep actually does is provide the ultimate favorable environment. It coordinates your hormones, supports immune balance, facilitates brain cleanup, and gives your physical tissues a much-needed break from the endless demands of waking life. It shields your body from the constant interruptions of noise, light, stress, food digestion, physical movement, and the million tiny negotiations required to stay awake. Ultimately, sleep is not the opposite of the healing process. It is one of its most powerful, quiet partners. Even while you feel completely disconnected from the world, your body is hard at work. Your bones are remodeling, your muscles are recovering, your brain is clearing out waste, your immune signals are rising and falling, your hormones are pulsing through your bloodstream, and your cells are rebuilding proteins. Your entire organism simply slips into a restorative rhythm, perfectly refined by millions of years of evolution across countless quiet nights. Yet, as the years pass, this beautifully orchestrated nightly restoration begins to shift. Over the course of your life, the mechanics of healing naturally evolve. Your sleep patterns change, hormonal balances fluctuate, immune reactions transform, and stem cells lose a bit of their youthful eagerness, causing tissues to renew at a more leisurely pace. Your body never actually stops fixing itself, but the speed and exactness of these fixes slowly alter. Getting older isn't just about your physical form falling apart. The reality is far more nuanced and fascinating. The aging process represents a slow buildup of cellular wear and tear, combined with the evolving capabilities of your maintenance crews, all while your cells continuously strive to survive in an endlessly demanding environment. There is no single master switch that flips you from young to old, nor is there a microscopic countdown timer that suddenly voids your biological warranty. Instead, getting older is the result of numerous biological pathways interacting over decades. Your genetic code might gather minor errors, proteins might fold incorrectly, and your cellular power plants, the mitochondria, might lose a step. Meanwhile, stem cells might ignore repair signals, immune oversight might drift, collagen fibers might rigidify, and blood vessels might lose a touch of their elasticity. Through it all, your body keeps working hard to heal. It is simply operating with a much richer, more complex history. A major concept in the biology of getting older is cellular senescence. This happens when a cell permanently halts its division cycle, but stays metabolically alive. Initially, this acts as a brilliant defense mechanism. If a cell sustains heavy damage or detects abnormal signals, refusing to divide prevents it from turning cancerous, effectively acting as a biological emergency brake. However, these retired cells don't always sit in peaceful silence. Many of them secrete chemical messages that impact the surrounding tissue, drawing in immune troops, stirring up inflammation, remodeling the extracellular matrix, and changing how adjacent cells act. If your body efficiently sweeps away these senescent cells, they serve as a helpful part of normal tissue protection. But if they start to pile up, they can drive chronic inflammation and cause tissues to malfunction. This highlights a classic paradox of getting older. A biological trick that is incredibly helpful in the short run can become a major headache if it sticks around too long. The understanding that cells have a strict division limit stems from the pioneering research of Leonard Hayflick. Back in the 1960s, Hayflick demonstrated that standard human cells cultivated in a lab will not multiply endlessly. They hit a specific numerical ceiling before permanently stopping their growth. This discovery, famously dubbed the Hayflick limit, shattered the previous assumption that regular cells were naturally immortal when removed from the body. A primary reason for this division cap involves telomeres, which act as protective caps on the ends of your chromosomes. They stop the chromosome ends from being falsely identified as shattered DNA. Every time numerous cell types split, these telomeres shrink a little bit. Once they dwindle past a critical threshold, the cell either quits dividing or slips into senescence. While telomeres are undeniably vital, they are far from the entire explanation for aging. Treating them as the sole culprit is a massive oversimplification. Growing older isn't merely about telomeres fraying away, and having exceptionally long telomeres isn't universally beneficial, since cells also require safeguards against rampant, uncontrolled multiplication. This is precisely why telomere science is deeply intertwined with cancer research, just as much as aging research. The monumental breakthroughs regarding telomeres and telomerase, the enzyme capable of preserving telomere length in specific cells, were achieved by Elizabeth Blackburn, Carol Greider, and Jack Szostak. Their groundbreaking discoveries illuminated exactly how chromosomes stay protected and how certain cells keep their dividing abilities intact. Because telomerase is highly active in stem cells, reproductive cells, and unfortunately many cancer cells, it perfectly illustrates the razor-thin line between healthy renewal and dangerous risk. Another crucial piece of the puzzle is inflammaging. This term describes the subtle, persistent, low-grade inflammation that accompanies the aging process. Unlike the intense, localized swelling you get from a fresh cut, inflammaging is a quiet, widespread, and enduring simmer. It can be triggered by shifting immune dynamics, lingering senescent cells, built-up cellular stress, alterations in your gut microbiome, stubborn low-level infections, metabolic changes, and a buildup of damaged molecules that keep your immune defenses on mild alert. This is highly relevant because proper healing relies on inflammation being perfectly timed. A brief inflammatory burst defends the area and preps it for reconstruction, whereas a prolonged, low-level inflammatory hum can actually sabotage the healing process, degrade tissues, and elevate disease risks. Because older tissues often already exist in this slightly inflamed baseline state, any new injury has to heal in a biological neighborhood that is noticeably less peaceful and less efficient than it used to be. Healing also transforms because your stem cells transform. Adult stem cells don't just vanish overnight, but their operational habits definitely shift as the years go by. Some lose their ability to divide rapidly, while others become somewhat deaf to chemical repair signals. Furthermore, their surrounding neighborhoods, the stem cell niches, also undergo makeovers. Since a stem cell relies heavily on its local environment to dictate its actions, a neighborhood that becomes inflamed, rigid, poorly vascularized, or chemically imbalanced will cause the resident stem cells to underperform. Circulation plays a massive role here too. Flawless repair requires a steady flow of oxygen, nutrients, immune defenders, and waste extraction. As your vascular system ages, certain blood vessels lose their suppleness, making circulation in specific areas less robust. This diminished blood flow delays the arrival of crucial building blocks and restricts the expansion of fresh tissue. The extracellular matrix undergoes its own renovations as well. Over time, collagen fibers become increasingly rigid and heavily cross-linked, which directly impacts the pliability of your skin, blood vessels, tendons, and various other structures. Because cells physically feel their surroundings, this increased tissue stiffness actually alters cellular behavior. Even before any visible injury happens, an older tissue transmits vastly different mechanical cues compared to a younger one. Your immune defenses also experience a remodeling. Certain immune reactions might lose their punch, while others become overly aggressive. Your system might struggle to fight off novel pathogens, take longer to sweep away cellular debris, or stay inflamed well past the point of necessity after a minor bump. None of this implies that an older body simply gives up on healing. You are still repairing yourself every single day. The process might just take a bit longer, finish slightly less perfectly, or leave behind a little more stiffness, scar tissue, or lingering sensitivity. Therefore, aging is absolutely not a straightforward plunge from flawless perfection to total breakdown. A youthful body is never truly perfect, and an older body is far more than just a collection of damaged goods. Both are incredibly dynamic, constantly adapting and perpetually fixing themselves. However, over many decades, Tiny biological flaws can start piling up faster than your maintenance crews can clear them out. Your repair systems keep grinding away, but they are forced to carry the heavy luggage of all previous fixes, past inflammatory battles, modified tissues, and cells that have weathered years of chemical turbulence. There is absolutely no reason to view this through a pessimistic lens. Getting older is actually the ultimate proof of your biological resilience. An aging physique has successfully battled through innumerable infections, physical traumas, stressful events, countless meals, peaceful nights, endless movements, cherished memories, and perfectly ordinary days. It has continuously patched, swept, rebuilt, and recalibrated time and time again. The wrinkles on your face, the slightly longer recovery times, the morning stiffness, and the gradual slowing of your healing speed do not just represent loss. They represent a profound personal history. The scientific study of aging clarifies why our healing capacities shift over a lifespan, but it never reduces a human being to a machine with worn-out gears. Instead, it highlights just how vibrantly alive your body remains. It is still actively negotiating its internal balance, still fiercely responding to damage, and still relentlessly striving to maintain order, even as the workload gets heavier. And precisely because our natural repair mechanisms have their boundaries, researchers are tirelessly exploring ways to comprehend, bolster, and perhaps carefully push those boundaries through the exciting frontiers of regenerative medicine, advanced tissue engineering, and the next wave of biomedical innovation. Stepping into that future requires a very specific type of optimism. We aren't talking about the loud, flashy promises of swapping out organs instantly or getting a brand new spine delivered by next Tuesday. Instead, the actual path forward is much more deliberate, highly cautious, and honestly, a lot more fascinating. Progress here relies on deeply grasping how cells communicate, how materials interact, how genes function, and how the immune system reacts within healing environments. This entire domain is widely known as regenerative medicine. The ultimate mission is to figure out how to assist, enhance, or simply understand the body's innate healing capabilities. To do this, scientists blend stem cell research, tissue engineering, gene therapy, biomaterials, organoids, and targeted immune control. The objective isn't necessarily to force the body into doing something totally alien. More often than not, it is about giving the body a helpful nudge to perform its natural repair jobs more efficiently, more securely, or in scenarios where its default systems fall short. Take tissue engineering, for instance, which stands out as a prime illustration of this approach. Here, experts mix living cells, structural scaffolds, and chemical messengers to build the perfect setting for tissue to regenerate and organize. Think of a scaffold as a temporary physical support, much like the scaffolding wrapped around a building undergoing renovations. It gives cells a physical place to cling to and arrange themselves, and it can be crafted from synthetic compounds, natural substances, or a blend of the two. The ideal scaffold offers direction without obstructing the cellular workers. Those cellular workers might be specialized tissue cells, versatile stem cells, or cells coaxed into acting in highly specific manners. Meanwhile, signaling molecules act as the foreman, instructing these cells on their tasks. These chemical cues dictate cell survival, movement, growth, inflammatory responses, and differentiation, the crucial phase where cells mature into specialized types. However, simply multiplying cells isn't the real hurdle. Cells can easily multiply in the wrong locations, in incorrect quantities, or in chaotic patterns. The true difficulty lies in organization. A functional tissue is never just a random clump of cells. Consider how skin is built in distinct layers, or how bone relies on a rigid mineral architecture. Tendons require perfectly aligned collagen fibers. while liver tissue depends on intricate metabolic pathways and blood flow. Heart muscle cells must contract in perfect unison, and nerves demand exact wiring. Therefore, repairing intricate tissues forces scientists to juggle oxygen delivery, mechanical forces, timing, physical shape, immune reactions, and the exact signals needed to guide cells into their proper formations. This is where biomaterials become absolutely essential. These are specially engineered substances meant to interface directly with living biology. You will find them in surgical meshes, bone replacements, advanced wound dressings, implants, and targeted drug delivery setups. In the realm of healing, a top-tier biomaterial can direct cellular behavior, calm unnecessary inflammation, break down harmlessly over time, or release chemical cues at a perfectly timed rhythm. But the human body doesn't just blindly accept foreign objects. It thoroughly investigates them, coats them in proteins, dispatches immune sentinels, and then makes a choice: integrate the material, isolate it, trigger inflammation, or accept it. After all, biology only plays nice when it wants to. Another vital instrument in this toolkit is the organoid. These are tiny, simplified versions of human tissues cultivated in labs using stem cells or mature tissue cells. They can mimic certain traits of lungs, kidneys, livers, brains, or intestines. But let's be clear, they aren't fully formed organs. A brain organoid isn't sitting there pondering the universe, and an intestinal organoid isn't demanding a sandwich. What they do offer is a highly controlled environment for researchers to observe tissue behavior, drug reactions, infections, genetic disorders, and developmental processes that are nearly impossible to watch directly inside a living person. By using these mini models, scientists can track how diseases progress, how mutations alter growth, and how medications impact living tissue. Furthermore, they pave the way for personalized medicine, where a patient's own cells could be used to test specific treatments before they are ever administered. Adding yet another dimension to this field are gene editing and gene therapy. Since defective genetic instructions cause many healing failures and diseases, gene therapy seeks to silence, replace, add, or tweak genetic material to cure these issues. Gene editing takes this a step further by physically altering DNA at exact coordinates. The most famous method here is CRISPR-Cas9, which stands for clustered regularly, interspaced, short palindromic repeats, working alongside Cas enzymes. Borrowed from a natural defense strategy used by bacteria, this technique allows scientists to steer a Cas enzyme to a precise DNA sequence to snip or modify the code. Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier were the pioneering minds who transformed this concept into a revolutionary editing tool. Yet this immense power demands extreme care. Altering DNA inside living organisms brings up massive concerns regarding long-term safety, ethical boundaries, immune reactions, delivery methods, and unintended side effects. A tool capable of rewriting the code of life is powerful exactly because the stakes are so incredibly high. In the medical world, wielding power without extreme caution isn't progress. It's just trouble in a clean lab coat. Guiding the immune system is equally critical for the future of healing. Because immune responses can either sabotage or supercharge recovery, scientists are figuring out how to steer these reactions with pinpoint accuracy. This could involve suppressing destructive chronic inflammation, boosting the positive actions of macrophages, stopping the rejection of lab-grown tissues, or helping the body accept transplants. Ultimately, healing isn't just about dumping new cells or materials into a wound. It is about cultivating the perfect biological environment. Global research powerhouses are tackling these exact challenges. The Francis Crick Institute drives cutting-edge studies in tissue function, disease, development, genetics, and cell biology. The National Institutes of Health finances and executes massive research portfolios covering wound healing, genetics, immune biology, and regenerative medicine. Meanwhile, the European Molecular Biology Laboratory dives deep into genomics, imaging, developmental biology, and the intricate mechanics of living systems. Together, these organizations are transforming broad scientific optimism into rigorously tested facts. Naturally, the obstacles are immense, and safety remains the absolute priority. If cells multiply too aggressively, cancer risks skyrocket. The immune system might attack engineered or transplanted tissues. Without a dedicated blood supply to deliver nutrients and oxygen, new cells will quickly perish. Nerves must successfully rewire, and the new tissue must possess the mechanical toughness required for its specific job. We also cannot ignore the ethical dilemmas surrounding genetic modifications, embryo research, fair access, and informed consent. Strict regulations are non-negotiable to ensure that exciting theories are thoroughly vetted before reaching patients. Furthermore, there is a massive chasm between a successful lab experiment and a reliable clinical treatment. A breakthrough might look flawless in an animal model or a petri dish, but human bodies are vastly older, larger, and infinitely more complex. A therapy must do more than work once under perfect conditions. It must deliver safe, consistent, and meaningful results for everyday people. Even with these hurdles, the trajectory of this science is nothing short of astonishing. We are finally uncovering not just how the body heals, but why it sometimes fails. We are decoding how cells interpret instructions, how physical scaffolds direct growth, how genetics dictate repair, and how we can step in when natural healing falls short. The future of bodily repair won't arrive as a single magical miracle cure. Instead, it will unfold as a series of meticulous, targeted improvements. Smarter biomaterials, highly accurate organoids, refined stem cell techniques, safer gene therapies, advanced wound care, and a deeper grasp of chronic inflammation and aging. This isn't science fiction masquerading as healthcare. It is a careful, deliberate expansion of the exact same processes your body has been performing all along, detecting injury, dispatching signals, sweeping away debris, reconstructing tissue, and quietly doing everything it can to keep life going. Yet, this incredible ongoing effort doesn't rely on one magical fix or a hidden master switch. There is no flawless internal mechanic or single elegant process running the show. Rather, your survival depends on a massive network of overlapping mechanisms operating across various scales. Blood plugs up injuries, while inflammation coordinates cleanup. Skin rebuilds the outer shield, and scar tissue patches things up when rapid strength outweighs a perfect rebuild. Meanwhile, stem cells refresh particular tissues, bones patiently reconstruct, and muscles adjust to stress. Tendons and ligaments undergo slow remodeling, just as the immune system protects, sanitizes, and sends messages. Microscopically, cells fix DNA, reuse proteins, and self-destruct if damage is too severe. Energy production is also crucial. Mitochondria generate ATP fueling cellular movement, division, communication, and reconstruction, while nutrients supply essential building blocks. During sleep, your body enters a calmer phase, allowing metabolism, brain upkeep, immunity, and hormones to shift into a restorative groove. Over the years, aging alters the accuracy and speed of these functions, prompting regenerative medicine to explore how we might better assist natural healing. This capacity is incredibly strong, yet imperfect. It can stitch a laceration, mend a broken bone, replenish blood, soothe swelling, and save you from everyday wear and tear. However, it remains constrained by biological trade-offs. Genetics creates blood flow, tissue types, environment, and your unique physical history. Honestly, those limitations make the process astonishing. You are not a flawless machine, but a living renovation project, perpetually adapting, sweeping, patching, and reconstructing. Even when still or asleep, your systems stay gently active, preserving the delicate balance required for memory, movement, warmth, thought, and life. Beneath your awareness, your body never stops the quiet work of keeping you alive.